Ready? Aim!
There's too many!
Anyone see my mammoth?
Stumpy! Happy New Year! We're live! We're here! It's Monday! Is it a Monday? It's a Monday. We're doing the show. Christ. I genuinely forgot what day it was.
I mean, they're all the same these days, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Oh god. Anyway. How are you doing, Carlo?
I'm good, yeah. It's good to get back to it. Start thinking about the song again. Not really been much on my mind over Christmas. Kind of taking a break from it. There are some people who want their tournaments fixed or some things fixed. I'll do them soon. You know.
I love that. I'll do them soon.
Yeah.
TM. Yeah, cool. We obviously spoke. We do speak a little bit outside the show, guys. So I've already asked him how's he doing. But for the purposes of the show, Carlo, how was your Christmas period?
It was fine, yeah, very quiet. Just saw some family, nothing much else.
Mm-hmm. Classic.
And your
Yeah,
own?
I've not played any games. Basically, I think I played one a couple of days ago, which is about it. So.
Well, I've not played since the end of the negative ELO tournament. So, to be honest, that's one of the only things that I've played in a long time, actually. I mean,
yeah, because you
don't look at my own personal history, but yeah, I mean, the last 4 games that I played were just negative ELO, which means that, which was 1 game a week.
We haven't made it to Fridays in a while, right?
A half or something like that. So, yeah, it's been pretty slow going, not much gaming from my side.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And so, with a week off and 2 weeks since the last episode, there are of course lots of things that have happened in the Seamon world. Lots of things that have.
Like what?
Yeah, exactly. Like what? They put a post out. I don't know if it was just after Tourney Ground or before, but saying that people should go to Cherokee Open.
All right. Yeah. Have we talked at all about their official partnership with Frontline Gaming?
We mentioned it. We did mention it. Said that there's obviously going to be a US circuit, which I'm all for. Like, I actually like.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder how big it'll be. I
am.
Basically, it feels to me like, in my mind, because I've thought about and even discussed a little bit the idea and concept of a UK circuit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, to me, it means nothing unless like each event's about 32, right? Like,
yeah.
Like, basically, if they're less than 32 player events, then I don't know, like, not that a less than 32 player event is worthless, but you're not really building towards. You're not a circuit towards a really big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't. All previous experience says that the US doesn't support that size of player base.
Mm-hmm.
It's a rare tournament that gets to 32. And I don't even necessarily. And to put that into perspective, I don't believe necessarily that the UK can like support many 32 player events in a circuit manner.
And you could probably do 4.
A year.
Maybe.
Yeah, like every 3 or 4 months, you might be able to. And then it's a question of like, does that come at the detriment of anybody else who's trying to run events and stuff like that? So like, it's a whole difficult thing to pull off. And that is with the UK being able to, comfortably have secured the 120, the 128 sized LGT. Like there are some international travelers for that, but I mean, the LVO is looking to be what I think it's a 60-person event these days, isn't it?
They were at 48. It might be up to 60. Yeah, I can't remember exactly.
I think it got extended from 48 to 60. I might be wrong, but again, I mean that effectively, on the size of the US, is attracting tons of international. East to West Coast,
Mhm.
Midwest over to
It's the
over to
equivalent
the West Coast.
in terms of distance. So
Yeah,
yeah,
basically, they're getting tons of people coming to this event. I do believe they're actually getting some internationals as well, right?
last I
Um,
heard they had a couple. Yeah.
yeah. These are people who will not be attending the Cherokee Open, I'd guess, right?
Mhm.
So what size these regional events end up being will be quite interesting to me. I've always had in my mind that like if you can reach out and set up something in the 32 to 64 regularly on like a quarterly basis, then we're really talking about song breaking into like maybe tournament mainstream, not 40k mainstream, but
Well, I mean,
yeah. But
it's difficult, right? It's difficult because um, Frontline Gaming FLG for short, not LFG. I'm not looking for TTS games right now, but FLG are, for want of a better term, they are professionals in terms of like running events.
Mhm,
They
mhm.
are professional tournament organizers. Um, Now that's kind of a double whammy, right? Because the TOs specifically for the song events, they are getting various different people to specifically TO events from the song community. Like I know that Carl was heavily involved with. He's not the TO, I believe, but he's heavily involved and knows the TO for LVO. Forgotten his name now. Carl has told me at some point. Um, but I believe Luke has stepped up either for Cherokee or one of the other ones. I can't remember which one Luke stepped up for.
Mhm.
So, like, the TOs are song players. They're not being run externally, which I think has happened in some scenarios, in some cases, where it's people outside of the game running the event, which is a bit weird because it means that things like complicated rules discussions and stuff are they're just more complex to kind of get around because the person isn't as involved with them perhaps or doesn't necessarily speak from a Seamon perspective either, which is what you saw at the US, right?
Mhm.
But that being said, Song has been pretty good in that. I think always, pretty much always for big events, TOs have been pretty solid. Um, we haven't had the kind of problems that Legion has had, or um, oh, the other Star Wars game. But there was some problems that, in case people didn't know, there was some quite major TO issues at LGT this year for different game systems.
You mean for
Um,
X-wing?
was it X-wing as well as Legion? I think it was X-wing.
I don't know. You said the other Star Wars game.
I think it might have been it might have been Armada. You see,
Okay. Yeah.
the Armada event they had. But I know that Legion specifically had like a real big thing, and myself and Carlo have read an article around terrain and this whole kind of like problem at LGT with the
Yeah.
Legion
Well, it's
event.
interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting because terrain is a semi-common bugbear, shall we say,
Mhm.
or sore point for what is generally a competitive community who believe that there's like a standard, and then of course like there may be tournament guidelines around it or there may not be, and then if you bring in a TO who doesn't particularly know the game that well, isn't like super in touch with the community could well have certain expectations of what terrain looks like in terms of, so we're talking about 3D terrain here, of course we're talking about 3D line of sight blocking terrain, immersion in the game, all these things. And if the TO's not like in sync with what the players' expectations are, there have been numerous, failings across like huge, like 40k's had that problem in the past, other games. And so it's interesting that Song really circumnavigates that problem. That has never been an issue. The big issue we have, the big issue of our day is, oh my god, it's random, or oh my god, it's not random, or oh my god, they're using 3 pieces of terrain. Like, I mean, like,
Yeah.
yes, it matters, but like everybody just goes, okay, that's what they've done. Do you know what I mean? And it can have an implication on the game. And some people might feel that it is quite an important decision. but to get it so wrong is very different than like the huge headline things of like, oh my god, LGT one time had, you know, just some polystyrene squares representing terrain 1 year because, you know, I don't know, it was too big, their terrain didn't turn up, whatever. Legion, the whole thing was about like basically they had half as much terrain as they were supposed to have, which particularly in true line of sight shooting range, you know, futuristic games,
Yeah.
means that like basically some factions just suddenly are way better than others. Like terrain, it's also interesting because it's not nothing, but terrain actually has quite a low impact on song. Like line of sight never gets blocked. That's not a thing. So there's no terrain setup which like negates ranged armies. And so basically its low impact means that it's not such a talking point. Always the talking point or the thing that makes or breaks a TO's ability to TO an event is whether or not they can answer the rules questions. And that's not simple at its most complicated, but it is very simple at its base entry level. Like, so yeah, I've never heard of TOs getting it wildly wrong. Of course, well, you know, they can't fuck up the pairings and the whole system, but you know,
screw up everything else.
Yeah, that feels like an aside. Like, you know, like that's a different thing.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, FLG stepping in will be interesting to see how they put their spin on it. I know that there are talks underway of trying to get things streamed as well, and this is actually, I'm not going to go into details with some of the stuff, but like this is the problem when you have a professional body streaming an event or running an event, is that for FLG as well, for something like Games Workshop, they control the not individual reports, but they control the content that gets put out for that event because that's their event. They control the content. That means that, you know, if you wanted to go to say LVO or Cherokee Open and stream a game, you can't. You can't stream a game unless you have explicit permission. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like LGT ran the same principle. You know, the difference is that LGT, it's kind of like, yeah, sure, if you want to do it, you can. You might need some help setting things up. There might be some other things we need to do. We'll try and help you. But if you've got your own kit and you just manage it yourself, sure, we don't really care. Whereas FLG is very much kind of like, no, if you want to stream, you have to abide by X, Y, Z. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. It's their event. They are completely within their remits to do that. But it does have the implication, of course, for smaller events, smaller game systems at the event are less likely to get the exposure that they might want. And I'm not actually talking Song here necessarily, but any of the smaller game systems. And
yeah,
and that
I wonder if every game that's on the smaller side feels that it's community driven. I do wonder that. I'm not close enough to a number of other games, but Song feels incredibly community driven by the absence of it being Seamon driven.
Yeah.
And absence of Frontline getting somewhat involved. Like, you know, like Frontline only started to stock it and get involved in the game in any capacity like 6 months ago or something like that, right?
This year, yeah. Well, last year.
Yeah. So yeah, last year. So anyway, it feels like it's always been driven by, you know, like certain channels promoting the game, certain channels doing battle reports, you know, us talking about it here, Small Council Radio, Sunday Slaughter, I'm really talking about it's driven by Sunday Slaughter and Sunday Slaughter's content, you know what I mean? But like, that's not to say that there aren't other people creating videos doing these things, at least very US centric wise, you know, Sunday Slaughter seems, you know, is the staple of what is growing the game and bringing people to it. So then it feels like if they're not able to like have control and do that, I genuinely wonder if the game like Legion, like Marvel Crisis Protocol, stuff like that, their community also feels that they are driven to growth by their own community, or if they, you know, give it more to AMG. Like AMG are more involved, and therefore they grow our game, and they provide XYZ. So I think that's quite interesting about that involvement and whether or not that is a shift. I do genuinely question whether or not Frontline can bring something to the table. Like I say, does the circuit being a circuit inherently add value? Like, this is a question that I've thought for a while and wondered, because I've thought for a while there is maybe the opportunity or reality to like get together, the various people who run events around the UK and like turn that into some kind of circuit, or like through the relationship with LGT. I mean, the LGT, the London Grand Tournament, is just UK frontline gaming in like so many respects, except for the fact that the LGT doesn't have a web store, or maybe I don't know. Like it's much less on the shop side of things.
Yeah,
but tournament to tournament, like tournament organization, tournament, like they are like in step with each other. They are like one of them becomes the biggest, then the other one becomes the biggest, and they just like and it's just a constant discussion about like. Which one's the more prestigious event and stuff like that.
FLG is also the thing that FLG steps into as well, which FLG is bigger than LGT in terms of what it does. And that's because FLG steps into the news side and producing articles and things like that. It does a lot of reviewing, through the likes of Carly and stuff like that, and trying to stay on top of the game, which is what the LGT doesn't do. The LGT doesn't even pretend to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference,
it
really.
Doesn't have... the LGT doesn't, at least in my mind, not in the same kind of scale at all, doesn't have a content side to itself, like not in the same way. But tournament wise, they are the same
identical
thing. Yeah, like they are just like not even like the UK's, like although it is incredibly UK centric, London Grand Tournament is basically Europe's FLG in terms of tournaments. Anyway, so whether or not just like having that name attached to it therefore gives it credence and power and stuff like that. I'm well aware that like having something attached to a tournament gives it value. The whole point of Song of Ice and Fire Starts is that by linking every result you ever have together, you give them all value, right? So what the circuit will do is very, very interesting to me. It is actually, I mean, I'm interested in what just comes out of LVO in what is it? Are we talking a couple of weeks now?
20th, right? LVO's 20th? Ish?
Right there in a minute.
27th. Yeah, week after.
Okay, 4 weeks then.
Yeah, 4 weeks.
Is that?
Just under. Just under 4.
Yeah, so I'll be really interested in what comes out of LVO, but I'll also be really interested in what the take-up of the wider tournament circuit is, how successful that is, and whether or not that is a whole new step forward for the US's tournament scene. I'd really, really love for them to be able to say, like, we were on 4 32-player events. AMG is chaos. Yeah, it's funny. I've heard loads of differing opinions on AMG. Like, some people think that they're the fucking messiahs, and other people think that they're an absolute shit show. I mean, I guess I don't think that they're wildly different to Seamon, which is I think that they're a very small company with a huge IP, multiple huge IPs under their control, and they just don't know how to handle it properly. But they're almost like they're doing some great things and just like absolutely missing the ball on others.
I don't know. Like, I don't follow Legion that closely, and I don't follow MCP that closely. But to put it in perspective, I feel the Legion community is very similar to the Song community in how it's run and how it's dictated and how it kind of executes itself. I feel like the MCP community is more AMG in that I haven't got a bloody clue. I think is it the Cabal, whatever I don't know what they're called, but the Bounty Hunters in Legion were the last things released, and I think either Mandalorian has been released or is due to be released at some point. I don't really know. Whereas MCP, I nearly always know what is going to be released, what is coming out, or what has just come out in terms of releases. I understand their release cycle, and I don't follow the game at all. And I don't follow either of the games at all.
Yeah.
And I understand one of them, and I don't understand the other. I've played them both. To me, that's very weird that they control both, and they seem to run them very differently. Very weird.
Yeah, I do think that it's a very Timo's. I think is classic a classic example of this, which is it seemed to me that everybody involved with MCP, which of course was always AMG's game, pretty much only have positive things to say about AMG.
Yeah,
like that's where all my history of like AMG seem to be like the fucking messiahs of not small indie, but you know what I mean, like independent new skirmish game makers. Do you know what I mean? Like not Games Workshop. The people who are not Games Workshop, AMG are doing it really well. Also heard, like Conquest, Parabellum. Oh my god, like Parabellum can do no wrong. Like, you know what I mean? Basically, were these two kind of things. I always wondered for the past few years. Do you know what I mean? Like, no shit. My god, all these things that Seamon do piss me off. Should I jump ship? Do you know what I mean? Like, does this because the success of AMG is so much, or like the success of MCP is so much more intertwined with what AMG will and do and can do with the game than what its current state is any given time. In the same way that you can say exactly the same for A Song of Ice and Fire. The success of A Song of Ice and Fire we talk about in 3-4 years time, whether or not we are still talking about Song of Ice and Fire in 3-4 years time, it depends not so much on the balance right now, the releases last month, whatever. It depends on like the trajectory that Seamon put it on, right? So if we think that there's a big issue with Seamon's trajectory, but some other people are like absolutely smashing out the park, they're doing it absolutely phenomenal, right? Then there is reason to be concerned. AMG seemed like could do no wrong with MCP. Then, of course, there was that. I mean, I don't know every in and out of it, but they were bought by the Asmodee umbrella, and then
they're in it.
Yeah, and then things that belonged to Fantasy Flight Games got given the IPs of Legion, X-Wing, Armada, I believe all Star Wars. Basically, Fantasy Flight Games stopped making miniatures.
Yes,
effectively, like they were given all of their miniature games and IPs were given away, and they became only card and board game makers at that point, right? So they still make all of their living card games, they make all of their board games, all of those things, of which I'm still absolute big fanboy. So you know what I mean. But I don't think I've heard anybody who plays any of those games that were moved from FFG over to AMG ever say anything positive about AMG, which is very interesting. It is a big question about whether or not AMG don't know how to handle them, whether or not they were given a poison chalice that was never going to go well for them is a big question. There's big things about like AMG weren't happy with the state of the game and they made changes to many of the games. Whether or not that was that, like the player base just never gave them a chance, or whether or not they are actually, worse changes is, totally up for debate. Also, I believe there's a whole thing about like FFG already had a massive pipeline of things that were being released, but AMG wouldn't make any money from them, or some kind of like weird situation like that. AMG had no interest in promoting the next set of releases because they weren't their stuff.
Yeah.
Right. They actually weren't even really allowed to sell them. Basically, FFG were going to keep selling all this stuff, making money from it, and AMG were expected to like
develop the design and
rules for it, or develop it, or whatever it was. So it wasn't until maybe the Shadow Sun Collective or whatever in Legion was the first point at which AMG became actually the owners of Legion. But they had been, shall we call it, the custodians for like quite a while. Anyway, it's a whole mess of a situation. Still, I guess the only company which still seems beyond reproach is Parabellum. It's gone very quiet on the Conquest front. Maybe that's just because I don't interact with people who are interested in Conquest as much as I used to. But yeah, like things have gone tepid on the Conquest because it was going to be the next big. Like, oh my god, who could stop Parabellum? Conquest is amazing. It is even incredibly community focused, tech focused. They had this whole living world thing. Don't know if it's fallen flat or just it's chugging away by itself and being successful.
It's an odd one, Parabellum, because like I was vaguely following along with it originally, and then I was speaking to Daryl about this, and basically from what I could gather, I thought a faction had been released, right? Because I'd seen loads of like concept art and things, or what I thought I saw concept art, and when they announced in the living world what the next faction would be, this, that, and the other. And then I was talking to Daryl around about the time of LGT, and I was like, "Oh yeah, they've been released yet?" And it was kind of like it was almost like either A, they weren't released and they weren't even on the horizon. It was like the first lot of concept art was really seen, and I was like, "Well, I'm sure I saw something." Or B, the faction was released, but it wasn't the faction I thought it was, and things like that. It was like disjointed. I have no idea. Like it was really weird.
I mean, the world is quite complex and in depth. Like it is very interesting. I know some people are incredibly passionate about that game, but I wonder whether or not it'll ever have wide appeal. I know they're trying to build something that. Interestingly, I feel like they're effectively running the Games Workshop model of like 30 years ago, which is like
build a game.
Lore matters more than anything else, right? Like build a lore that people like can't get themselves away from. They like read the books even if they're not playing the game, and they're like you could make stories and films and narratives, and you know what I mean, like if you flesh out this whole lore, then the game will solve itself and you'll have players. Interesting thought process, because most of the games seem to now be far more focused on the idea that like big IP helps us to sell game because you have established things, established names, established characters, which we can hook people in with. And then what we're actually selling is we're selling miniatures and rule set.
Yep.
So you're not really allowed to sell your rule set. Very few companies out there now who can get away with selling the rules, i.e. only Games Workshop.
Well, that's because they update it every 5 seconds and they try and stop people. Yeah. Anyway, and they enforce it, right? You've got to have a copy of the rules if you turn up, like certain stuff, which is
you must have. I believe you must have physical copies of every rule that you're using, which leads to people having to like bring 4 codex rule books to tournaments and games just to play one army.
No, never again for me. Thank you very much.
No game is perfect.
But yeah, so I mean, Seamon doesn't look too bad in the end in the overall scheme of things, even though they are frustrating. And yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be very interesting to see where it all goes. For FLG, and I do hope there is good coverage. I do hope that they do cover LVO well. I know we'll get coverage still. Partially through the people that we talk to, partially through the community itself, like Stovetop, Chris Tran. Those guys are going, so I'm sure that even if they can't record and even if they can't stream, they will literally still tell people what it's like. They'll still take pictures. They'll still do little bits and bobs they can from the games they're in. And that's just one of many people.
It's the question of the difference between coverage, which is kind of like coverage which you can find if you know to look for it, versus coverage which appears to you if you never even knew it was happening.
Yes.
Or never even knew the game existed, right? And that's the kind of like that's what's missing from the Seamon side of things. Like the community can always constantly provide for itself. The community can always, give each other battle reports, tournament discussions, all these things. But the community, generally speaking, isn't reaching people who aren't already looking for a Song of Ice and Fire content.
Yeah.
Now, Seamon can reach everybody who ever liked the Seamon page, and even linking up with Asmodee, like Asmodee can reach everybody in the board game sphere and say, hey, by the way, this game's cool. So the scale of like who you can reach is so different. That's why it's long-term, like growth of the game is always going to be so intertwined with like what kind of trajectory they put it on. So let's really hope. And it is interesting because that is something that FLG can provide.
Yes.
That like others can't. Like our channel, Song of Ice and Fire Stats, does not reach anybody who's not interested in a Song of Ice and Fire.
Not really.
FLG can post to people who have never who play 40k and are looking elsewhere, and have interest in other games, of which there are fucking tons. There are an order of magnitude or 2 orders of magnitude more people who play 40k and also play
XYZ,
MCP, that like a million, like they play 40k and other model games, and that's how like they stumble upon the idea of a Song of Ice and Fire. And if they suddenly then think, oh my god, look, there's a really active, good tournament going on here, like that's that. I've always believed that like seeing activity in the game is what will make people basically commit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Just say Hobbit, who's back after a long hiatus. I know he's been out of the game for a little while, but he's back trying to get some more games on online, and hopefully playing in his local community a lot more. I know he's been talking on the UK Discord a little bit more to try and arrange meetups there. Wasn't Seamon meant to be doing updates or drops every 3 months? Yeah? Kinda? Who knows? Anyway, they haven't done one.
The last one even in 2022, or was it the end of 2021?
2022, with the release of Season 1, right? Round about the release of Season 1.
Yeah, but was that the live chat? Or did they announce it in 2021?
It was
that live chat, and then they said, oh, by the way, how often do you want us to do updates? And everybody was like,
I want to say...
month. And then they were like, maybe every 3 months.
They have been, so Michael and Fabio have been, or had talked, if I remember rightly, to the community through various, I want to say January, February, March, maybe last year. I don't think we've heard directly from them in any form of live chat since at least then. And the update was, what, March last year? Ish?
Yeah, could be. It felt like a very long year, actually. Which normally, yeah. Wait, which is linked to how much stuff you did. So hopefully it means that I did a lot of stuff last year. But it felt like a long year.
Well, I think the problem. I was going to talk about this briefly, and I know you've obviously talked about it a lot, Carlo. But like we talk about meta and we talk about what is working, what is not working in the game, and I do think it felt like a long year because I think when we saw Season 1 come out and we saw basically the breath of fresh air of there wasn't much in the game at the start of Season 1 where you looked at it and went, this is completely busted. There was stuff that we look at now and think, back then of course it was Ranger Hunters kind of spam and the 9 activation Mance lists who were kind of doing all that they could to control the meta and win it, but it was broadly speaking a relatively open field. Outside of that, right?
There was nothing busted that was new.
No, exactly. And I think it felt like a long year because we had that. Everybody investigated that kind of game and that kind of meta, that kind of balance and things like that. And And it was, as far as most people were concerned, the balance was in a good spot. And then it deteriorated. And the more it deteriorated, the longer the game felt. Because it felt like we were moving away from where we were without necessarily anything actually happening in the game. Do you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't updates that were creating imbalance, it was other things. Literally poor releases. And that's what felt so long, is it felt so long. And, you know, it also felt long because we still see this issue of when an object is announced versus when we see it as a community versus when it's actually available to purchase. You know, with sometimes 6 or 7 weeks or even months between reveal and purchase time. And I think that's what's created this kind of like, it's been a long year, just as much as you said, you know, you've been busy, which, you know, is good. But I think the long years also come from the fact that it has felt like a long year in terms of just where the game is at. I can barely remember, which sounds scary, I can barely remember Commander scoring 2 VPs on victory points. And how the game played back then. I remember how it played, but like, it feels like that was a long, long, long time ago.
Yeah, it feels like we've been in a fighty, fighty set of scenarios for a very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think obviously if you're talking about 2021, like, you could say that like something of that magnitude, like a year is maybe fine. Like, I do feel like that's pushing it a bit, but like I still think any year between updates is too long. But like, you can sort of say, yeah, you know what, maybe it did take, even though Othel was so obvious and stuff like that, like it still took, it didn't take long for top players to understand what's broken. It took 3 months for the community to come around to the consensus of what's broken, right? Like, which are slightly different things.
Yeah.
Even if the top players know it from day one, and proved it to themselves by 1 month in, like, it takes a couple more months to prove it to the majority of other people. Now, there are some people who never come on board, never accept that. Like,
I feel
Othel's broken, right? But
yeah, I feel like if you said it takes 6 months to convince what I would say is the community, and by that I mean everyone except the people who won't be. Like, I feel like 6 months is easily a long enough time. 3 months
so anyway,
is a majority, definitely.
But the issue with 2021 season 1 is that when you only touch, like, I don't know, like generous kind of looking 15% of the game.
Yeah, I was gonna say 20% at a push. Yeah.
Yeah, like I was thinking 20 is very generous.
Yeah.
Somewhere between 10 and 20% of everything. When you actually count up like how many commanders got changed, like, it's probably less than 10% of them.
I mean, it's worth remembering as well. Some of these things are barely changes as well, right? We're talking like Final Strike got changed when it was dumb into being something a little bit less dumb. Didn't actually change what the card did or anything about the card. It was just not stupid anymore.
Exactly. So when we think about so few things got changed, the time to solving or something was like so much smaller. Time until the community's fatigued with it is so much smaller, because like a lot of people, almost nothing of theirs changed at all, right? So on the size of the changes that they made, I really do think that like you got to be talking about 6 monthly changes. Like, if that's what you're doing, and that's brilliant. Like, that's way better. Way better to change 10% of everything every 6 months than it is to change 50% of everything like every 3 years. But yeah, it feels like it's been too long of a period. I mean, Chris Eustace says that they get back in touch when they have something to sell, but I mean, they had Martells to sell, and like they never came out and sold them. Like, right? Like
Barely.
they were out. They were out in. I mean, they're out everywhere except Europe. They're out in Canada first, out in Poland, out in America. They're available. Not a peep from. Have they ever put even a post?
Yeah, they did. They put up stuff on the Desert Stands, August 4th. The announcement of Martell's and this is on the official songwriteandfire.seamon.com. So that was their kind of like last post on specifically on Songwriters and Fire specifically. I'm fairly sure that they did do something. Maybe they did a couple of things on Facebook, I think, but they haven't had an article on their website, on the Seamon website, explicitly for A Song of Ice and Fire. Bearing in mind this has all the other ones on, so this has got things like the Zombie Fridays. It's got things like its announcements of Esh and Spiel, all of those kind of things. It hasn't had an article on that front for a long time.
Yeah.
It definitely has had. I mean, last year was not good from Seamon communication perspective. To put it in perspective on the Seamon website, again at songoficeandfire.seamon.com/news, they put out a grand total of 8 articles last year. And of those 8 articles, one of them was announcing in January the US regional qualifier schedule, 2022 seasonal updates in February, the EU national champions comment in March, the store qualifier schedule in May, so the actual US system, an update to the EU national championships in May, the US national champions update in July. Then July they mentioned Golden Company Crossbowmen, Knights of Castle Rock Honor Guard, Golden Company Swordsman, and Golden Company Elephant. And August they mentioned Martells. That is literally it. Of the things they put out last year, 6 of the 8 things. Okay, 5 of the 8 things were to do with tournaments. 2 of them being EU, 3 of them being the US system. We had 1 with the seasonal 22 updates, and the other 2 were products. They did 2 product articles last year.
Yep. Interesting. You know, people are talking about the community, people in the community who think that it changed too much. I genuinely believe that it's an incredibly vocal, tiny minority. Honestly, you can literally go and look. It's like a handful of people, like you can practically name them, who post on every single post where somebody says XYZ needs to be changed, and somebody's like, "Oh, this game changes all the time." It is literally countable on a hand the people who come out of the woodwork continuously to say that the game changes all the time. I really do actually think that like people overstate that as a thing that people care about. Like really nobody like. The other weird thing about it is like if you don't want changes, then like you don't have to do them.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Like I think the game changes all the time. Like what? Because you play with one other friend and you're happy with the game. Great. Well, then just be happy with the game and keep playing.
Yeah. That's actually the bit that I don't understand. From my perspective, this is again my perspective, and I've done this with other games where I've not been involved. I'll just point this out, right? That I don't get heavily involved in every game that I play on every level like this. If it's Seamon, if it's A Song of Ice and Fire, I'm going to be playing the most recent rules set and the most recent up-to-date rules units XYZ XYZ, right? Because it's a game I follow, because it's a game I care about.
Mm-hmm.
I played a game of MCP the other week against one of our clubmates, John, and my phone had died, so I couldn't look up the recent like rosters of like who was in what faction. So I took an old faction card and I just picked off that list. And I said, "Look, John, I don't have the new one. Do you mind if I use these?" And he went, "Yeah, no, not a problem." And we just used them like, "Oh, but I wasn't playing the most recent MCP. Oh, but I was running oh, what's his face in the chair? I've forgotten his fucking name now. Big head in a chair, floating chair.
Oh, Modoc.
Modoc, yeah. I'm using like a pre-nerf Modoc or whatever, and it's like if anyone else was watching us play, they'd be like, "Oh my god, like that's terrible," and I'm like, "But I don't care. Like I don't care that the game changes because I'm not that invested in this game. I mean, I like the
Exactly.
models, but that's about it. I'm
you're
not going to
playing-
go online and find the new rules for him because I just don't
And unless
care.
you're playing at the level where the balance really matters,
Yeah.
right? Like the fine details of the balance matters,
Yeah.
then it doesn't matter. Like you don't need the changes because you're still hugely like determined by just like whether or not you know the game, like whether or not you know the rules properly, whether or not you know XYZ properly, not like the specifics of whether that cost you 4 energy or 5 energy or you cost 3 threat or 4 threat or whatever, do you know what I mean? Or whether or not they get to be part of XYZ affiliation. Whether or not somebody has 754 profile or a 765 profile, like isn't gonna matter to you. It matter like if you don't play Song like every month, shall we say? Like you play Song like every 4 or 5 times a year, 6 times a year, like every 2 months. Because just like knowing the rules, getting the rules right is going to determine who wins and whether or not you have fun, right? But those people are the mostly, in my experience, are the vocal minority where everything changes all the time. And it's like, well, okay, just like for you, it doesn't need to change. But for like, there are all these people who actually like really like this game and don't just play it like every once in a blue moon. And they need it to change because for them it's not right and it's not good and it does matter, and for you it doesn't matter. So why can't you just like let other people have the thing that they need to change? Because to you it doesn't matter, to them it does matter, so it's for the benefit of everybody if we go with the people who it does matter for.
I mean, Paul says most players, I'm going to catch up on chat now, but most players are not the elite who play silly number of games getting bored with the current meta within weeks. Sure, but like, I will also add that I actually think that the people who play a lot of games are not the people who get bored with the current meta. Is actually the irony. It's the mid-level players who are playing a medium number of games and then find themselves not enjoying some of those small subset of games because they feel like it's dominated by meta. Like you've only got to look at someone like myself, right? If anyone's going to be competitive but also play a lot of games, look at myself, Mikkel, even Jacob. We've played, I counted it, circa four games on average a week or even more. I'm not bored with the current meta. I'm not bored with it at all. Do I think it's a bit stale? Yeah, I think it's a bit stale. Do I think there's not much more you can do with it? I think there's a little couple of things more here and there that people can be tried, but like I'm not gonna go out there and I'm not gonna cause a ruckus by running something in an event. Jesus, that the scope for that kind of thing I think is gone. But I'm not bored with it by any stretch. I think that there are some people who get bored of it, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. To get bored with anything, completely fine. But and you mentioned
I think to me that like what that actually manifests as is that there are certain imbalances which the hyper competitive or just like the hyper active, do you know what I mean? Like don't even have to be super competitive. The hyper active players come to be incredibly well aware of within the first month of the balance changing. They are so acutely aware of what is broken, what is not fair, what is not equal, what is going to give them the best chance of winning with. The people who actually are most unhappy about that, as you say, are the people who are not aware of it yet, and then get curb stomped by it. 3-4 months into the balance patch. They go to a tournament and they get absolutely curb stomped by somebody who's absolutely refined this overpowered thing into a unbeatable, well-oiled machine, right?
Yeah.
And then they have this view that it will never be beaten. It will never be able to be beaten by them because of how badly they lost to it, like how utterly it ruined them. There will be a small element of that being player skill, but there'll also be a large element of that being real balance, right? Like, you know, in a lot of ways, they never did have a chance. Also didn't help that they're probably playing somebody way more experienced than them at the same time too. This person is now one of the least happy with the balance in the game, right? Like the person who is hyper competitive, maybe optional, like actually optional, is more okay and more not okay, but like has come to terms with the balance issues and continued to play anyway. They either choose to play this super powerful thing or they don't. It's actually, like you say, it's these players who are aware of its existence but don't understand the minutiae of it, don't understand how to counteract it, haven't met it millions of times over during its formation and started to have any kind of chance to beat it. And then now they just get absolutely destroyed by it whenever they see it. And they're the ones that like suffer from it the most. And yeah, I agree that it's you know, like, and you know, 50% of everybody has to be in the middle 50%. It's the middle 50% of the tournament who are least happy with the tournament balance. Like I find the people down the bottom, they're just happy fucking go lucky. Like they're just like, play this commander. I like, I do whatever. I enjoy the game. I had a great time. I had a great weekend. People at the top are like, yeah, it's a bit busted. You know, like I would change X, Y, Z, but you know, like I've played a million tournaments. I already know. I know what I'm going to meet. I came here knowing what I'm going to meet. These people who are somewhere in the middle who came thinking that they had a real chance to win because they play with something mid-tier, which is good enough to win at their own local event. They've heard stories about XYZ being like super powerful, and I'm like, oh no, I beat my local free throw player. Like I smash mans all the time. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and then they come to a tournament and they're like, oh my fucking god, I just got ransacked like by some people with some lists that I've never seen before. And then they're just like, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. They're, oh fuck, that's fucking. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, I mean, yeah, mate, but chill out. It's not my problem. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I've literally had people like tell me like, oh, your army's like fucking bullshit. Like at the table, and I'm like, okay, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's a tournament, mate. It's a game. Like, what do you want from me? Like, like, yeah. Are we gonna have fun anyway, or are we gonna play the next round, or are you just gonna sit here and call me a wanker? Because either's fine. I'm still gonna win. But, you know, like.
It's your choice of how the rest of this goes down, but there is only one route.
Your choice about how the next hour goes, mate. We can sit. I can sit and let you complain about the game if you want. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some people say like, some people say that games don't update that much often. A lot of them don't. But really, you know, when we talk about competitive games, it's really difficult when we talk about competitive games because what can you compare a competitive game like this with? You can't really compare it with Games Workshop because Games Workshop has it has an update every year for a start. They have the new, I forget what they call it. Is it called Chapter Approved or something like that? I don't fucking know.
Chapter Approved definitely exists, but I don't know what its implication on rules is.
No, I know that that's a thing though. That like I think
Chapter Approved was initially a Forge World thing, I think, and it might have originally been what was legal in 40k out of the Forge World range. But now you're really stretching my memory quite far back.
Never played competitive 40k, and I never intend to. But yeah, they do have relatively recent updates, right? On randomly on that note, I believe if anyone is interested in 40k, there may be a 40k update this year, sorry, towards the middle of the month, the middle of the year even. I know this seems really random offshoot, moment, time, tangent, and there is this random thing that I'm going to tell people purely because Warhammer is a special stamp that's being released this year by the Royal Mail, and it's being released, I think, in August. And the only reason you'd ever release a special stamp of Warhammer in August of all months might be because there's something happening in August for Warhammer. There you go. As a random thing. Anyway,
Henry Cavill's what's happening to
Henry Cavill.
Happening to Games Workshop in August.
Let's hope.
It's interesting. 40k it's interesting actually also, and Evan's talking about how like the key to 40k is that they talk about the balance where their balance is at with their community posts, and they're looking at data, right? Like they have this thing called Meta Watch, I think they recently.
Yeah.
I think this is actually a super interesting concept and idea in that it's incredibly new. They have been doing this for like a year and a half at most, unless I'm much mistaken. And Games Workshop were always the worst communicators with their community, like long ago. Particularly their tournament community. They actually like ostracized their tournament community. They were so anti-competitive play of their game. They used to their game was narrative. Their game was narrative. If you're not fucking happy with the balance, then read some fucking lore. Was pretty much their answer to stuff, right? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you're not happy with the balance, go and read Horus Rising, and you'll see why Abaddon is twice as fucking hard as everybody else. Do you know what I mean? Or like, do you know what I mean? It was basically like their answer.
Mm-hmm.
And Meta Watch and their almost begrudging pairing with Frontline Gaming as like an official US partner for tournaments, and because I forget, Frontline Gaming, maybe like somebody linked to Frontline Gaming or a subsidiary of Frontline Gaming, they had brought out a whole set of tournament scenarios which people use, not Games Workshop scenarios, loads of stuff for a whole fucking like decades. The tournament system behind 40k was run by the community, and begrudgingly, after years of decline, effectively, 40k finally got on board with it, finally released actual tournament rules, finally released tournament scenarios, realized the value of selling near weekly updates, because they sell their rules, near weekly updates to the competitive player base, because the competitive player base will buy anything. Like that's the thing that like Seamon don't seem to understand about competitive song players. Like competitive song players will buy anything. You know, if you release a fucking Golden Varys, I'll buy it. Do you know what I mean? Like what you know, release whatever tournament pack 3 with Alt Vargo in it.
Yes.
And I'll attend tournaments until I win one. Do you know what I mean? Like they just do not seem to understand. They have not tapped into how depraved competitive tabletop players are. That like it's wildly different to people who like board games or like whatever, like who dabble in Kickstarters or buy every Kickstarter. Do you know what I mean? It's even different to the people who buy the all-in Kickstarters. Like the depravity of people who play tabletop games competitively actually can barely be matched. The only people who outstrip it are people who play collectible card games competitively. That is the only one up of tabletop miniatures, because that is an endless sink. Like that's an endless well of money, right? Like the depravity that some of those people will go to for like a fucking golden hollow shimmer foil version of a card that they already have is unbelievable. Anyway,
I'm gonna,
so
on that note,
go on.
very quickly do a really bad flex, but just because I have them here, and you talk about the depravity of people who play miniatures games. I don't think I've used any of these boxes ever. Why do I own these? Why have I bought these? I've never opened them. Yes, we are depraved. Like, we are. This is half a stack that just happens to be next to my computer. We are super depraved. Why aren't they using this? Anyway, continue.
Yeah. I mean, so like here's an example of some of like somebody else being very successful with it, which is back in Fancy Flight Games actually really were good at tapping into that, both in terms of like launch party things, like launch packs that you sell to stores, but also like events that you participate in.
Mm-hmm.
They're like reasonably successful. Like they're participated in for things like their collectible card games, which are cooperative. But when you get down to things like Imperial Assault, which was played competitively as like, you know, this weird board game, skirmish game, tabletop miniatures game, hybrid thing. Very interesting rule set, very tight-knit rules, to be honest. The price people would pay for the exclusive dice that they gave away to people who made it to nationals or people who won a regional tournament was actually mind-boggling.
Yeah.
People would pay many hundreds of pounds for 3 dice that had like a shimmer because they represented winning or like being top 8 at UK nationals. I was actually like, the amount that I saw people selling and buying these dice for, like, and that's just normal. Like, and Fancy Flight knew it and understood it. Every release had new dice. Every year, new things, new whatever. The amount of interest that they'll generate from their hyper competitive players, like the amount that community will buy into that, is something that Seamon clearly just don't understand because they've never done anything for that side of the community, right? Like,
yeah.
Even no, that's not true. They did bring out the Golden Renly and Stannis.
Yes.
That is,
except,
and yes, it is artificial scarcity, right? Like, so I understand why it has this perceived value and stuff like that, right? It's just an example of the levels that some people like go to for tabletop games and how Seamon seem endlessly unable to tap into it. And I actually can't put my finger on what they're not doing other than the game night kits, which I think were great, like absolutely brilliant, and just never went past 2.
You mentioned the Golden Stannis and the Golden Renly, and there is a small problem with the Golden Stannis and the Golden Renly, right? And which is why I think that they're not as sought after as they once were. And it's because they didn't mean anything. Like,
that's true.
Some events had them.
Winning an event, right? Or whatever.
Yeah, some events had them.
Yeah.
That is literally it. And they're larger. They don't fit in the unit trays because their bases are larger. Like, which, from a perspective of a miniatures game, like you mentioned, like a dice there. A dice has value because you're going to take that to an event, and you're going to use it. You're not. Why would I pack my Golden Stannis or my Golden Renly to take to an event unless I'm using it as a turn marker? Realistically,
it's effectively like a different trophy. Like it's going to sit on yourself and nothing else.
Yes.
Like,
which is, why things like this, like the chair we got from Always Winter, for example, has infinitely more value than things like a plaque that I've got sat over there saying, "Well done, you won." Because this I'll actually take to events and use, and I'll always remember where that came from. And I'll talk to people about where I got it.
I mean, I agree with Joey. I do actually think that the golden miniatures kind of stupid.
Yeah, they are.
But like, yeah, I mean, because they somehow don't fulfill what they're supposed to have done.
The other problem you've got, right, and this is a big thing. why is a golden miniature? Why does a golden miniature matter? And the simple truth of the matter is they don't, because the golden miniature, if you want to paint it, which a lot of the even competitive people are still hobbyists, if you want to paint it, and one of the few things, Carlo, you'll rib me for not painting things, right? But like one of the few things I do paint are the characters, right? One of the few things I do paint is the things I give a shit about in terms of characters. And now I've got a bigger Stannis or bigger Renly that also don't fit in bases, but I'm going to paint them over, and they're going to lose the gold anyway. Like
what you've got is a bad color to base coat over. Yeah, and Chris, I mean, I agree with Chris, which is like, you say it's no different to a black. I mean, Chris loves a good certificate, never mind a black. But, I mean, like,
they're nice. I
very much appreciate a good trophy. Like,
oh yeah.
I mean, a good trophy means more to me than anything else. It means more to me than product. Means more to me. I mean, like, I don't care about winning a start set. Like, I'd rather win.
I've got a fucking sword.
A 50 quid trophy, right? Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
I've got a fucking sword. Like, that's really cool.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to take that to events. That's the thing. Like, what Brett got the Warhammer over in the US. He's not going to take that to events.
No.
Like, it's good. Cool trophies are awesome, but they're a different thing.
Yeah.
I feel.
I'm not even sure what San Diego Comic-Con promos Carl's talking about. What were they, Carl?
The promo cards. They were about this big.
Oh, massive cards. Right, yeah, again, useless. Who's going to
useless?
You're not using that at a thing. Whereas, now, some people do use cards. I don't use cards, right? But
NCU
their
cards
whole
about
hollow foil, absolute fucking catastrophe, right? That could have not been sold, and instead they could have been tournament prizes. They actually would have been really brilliant regional qualifiers or day 2 of Gen Con, top 16, that kind of stuff. They would have been a thing which some people would use. Now, actually, the problem is that like the majority of tournament players are non-physical at this point. Like they just play through the app.
Talk about Rob and Jamie metallic painted promos. I vaguely remember those, Carl. If you can't sell them, I mean, I'm sure me and Carlo will find a way of taking some off your hands. But like,
wait, are they silver?
Yeah, they might be.
Captains. There's a silver Swarm Brother. God, that's silver weird, Swarm. Isn't it? Like, there's actually more than I thought about, and yet nobody cares about them. Why does nobody care about these? Because everything about my previous experience with all these other games are that people should care. Because I feel like somebody at Seamon must be asking, like, why doesn't anybody care about these? We gave them some gold Renleys, and they said, where's the rest of the product? Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
because
why are they so shit?
Because they're not important, and that sounds really weird, but like, people don't care about them because the exclusivity of them isn't, like, ironically, they're not exclusive. Which sounds really weird. They are, but I went to San Diego Comic-Con.
They're limited, but they're not exclusive.
Yes.
They're different things.
Yes. Which is the same problem with the foil, right? The actual reason that the foil went, like, everyone did the whole problem with the foil cards and the ape shittery that was developed from it was not because the foil cards were necessary exclusivity or anything like that, but foil cards were one of the few times where people went, hang on, we can buy really cool things, and a lot of them sold. Like, they probably sold a lot of the stock that they made, because I know that some of the factions, I believe, sold out. They sold so many because there was this hype, and the reason it was a fuckassery is everyone bought them and went, these are amazing, it's going to be fantastic. They then failed to deliver them on time, and also then updated the game straight afterwards. Like, that was the exclusivity finally releasing the game. There were only, like, 500 of each faction or something? Buy one now before it goes out of stock. I bought one, and by the time it arrives, it's pointless.
Yeah. Luke says that there might be unique 3Ds for song attendees at the Cherokee Open.
Nice.
I tell you what, having not known this, Luke, this entire discussion feels like it should be top 8 only. it shouldn't just be whoever turns up. But I don't know. You've probably already got plans for where they go and what they do. Them meaning something specific matters so much more than them meaning that you bought a ticket.
I bring this up all the time because I've got an exact example of that. Well, my mammoth head that I use as my turn marker. That, for me, is exclusively more important than anything else I think I've ever got from an event. Because it meant something. It means something to me. Does it mean players will buy those? No, because that particular thing could be bought. But if that mammoth head was a Seamon design miniature that was won at a Nationals event, and they did that, you would be absolutely itching for the Lannister one, Carlo, or the Baratheon one, or the Greyjoy one, or the Targ one, whichever one you'd gone. You know what I mean? Like, and players would itch for those because they have exclusivity. Now, that particular thing, say it's the best thing I've ever won from an event in terms of using it for the game. That is the kind of thing you need to develop and use, and what Seamon need to kind of get on the back of, because they're useful things. You want stuff that's actually going to turn up and go to an event with you, while also being something that is unique.
Yeah. Anyway, I can't even remember how we got onto this. Other than it would be cool if Frontline Gaming, as somebody who have experience in this matter, were to implement something like this.
Yep.
And hey, maybe it's part of it. That would be cool.
And on the topic of balance, sure, like me and Carlo would love balance every 6 months. I could probably accept balance once a year, to be honest. I'd accept balance once a year, but you can't only have one communicative moment per year. And I know people said they talked during the Martell release, and I know they said they talked about that.
I mean, really, like, honestly, people were posting that, like, they talked through, like, honestly, I genuinely don't even know who the fuck they're talking about.
Well, they did a couple of videos. I know Miniac did his thing. That's great.
Yeah, I know about that one.
But that wasn't with, like, Seamon may have been involved in the back lanes, but it wasn't Seamon doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know that Miniac got Martells to preview, right?
And he, from my understanding, him and his team approached Seamon about it. Because they said we want to do this.
I know. It was half an hour ago. I just
half a year ago.
I genuinely don't know who the fuck supposedly previewed Martells other than Miniac.
Maybe On the Table Gaming. Probably did some content, but I don't.
Did he?
I
didn't see any.
Well, I mean, I don't watch it, so that doesn't help. But yeah. I don't know.
It's funny actually. On the thing of FAQs, I used to care about it so much. I actually just gave up on it. I gave up on it. Like honestly, like I just honestly like at this point, like the community just has to FAQ. Like I don't agree with it. Like I have very strong opinions that like it will the community will never be able to give a 100% official answer and all these things. But like I gave up on the idea that Seamon will keep up-to-date FAQs. So actually, it's not what I ask for anymore because it feels like a lost battle. It feels like so lost. Like,
I mean, the bit that I don't understand.
New updates would have to come out like every 2 months.
The bit I don't understand with FAQs, they could literally just release FAQs with a new unit, like the unit FAQs for that thing. If there's any new interactions. It could even be in an article, I don't know. You could easily do a couple of FAQs around the new abilities, how they're supposed to interact, with designer comments on the new. If the designers are releasing a new thing to the market, designers commenting on how it's supposed to react with the game. I'm not saying they would hit every interaction. It's very unlikely they'd hit every interaction. I wouldn't expect that. But them saying like, oh, this does this, and oh, this does this, or them pointing out an interaction that they weren't happy with the last released unit. Very simple, straightforward for them to do. But yeah, I think the thing from my perspective is as well, when we talk about FAQs, is it doesn't help that frequently asked questions from us and our perspective as the more competitive players, don't seem to be the questions they answer. And this has been consistent for years now. In that, what questions are they answering, and why are they getting? Where are they're getting these questions from? What are being generated? What is being generated?
Yeah, and the answers, the FAQ answers that they often seem to give are like basically obvious answers, like and that like often leads to like this language almost, like, at least on the forums way back. I'm talking mostly about the forums, right? And the more question and answer follow up style thing led to like disdainful answers, like, this is obvious, it's in the rules, this page, like, basically. And yet then when a question comes up which is not answered in the rules or is incredibly ambiguous at best, that is left silent. That is not answered. That's the question that the community actually need answered. And the community has already answered the other question, the one that got a disdainful answer, which was, this is in the rules, fucking read the rules. The community already told that person that, like, somewhere else. They told them on the Discord when they also asked the same question on Discord, and they asked it on Facebook. Like, somebody pointed out, it's on page 19 under disorderly charges, or do you know what I mean? When somebody asked for the 50th time, do I lose my lance if I get disorderly charge? Do you know what I mean? Somebody said, no, like, charge distinctly means charge, like, charge bonus means rerolls. Here's the page, here's the rule. Yeah. What we get is we get an FAQ that tells us that. It's like, well, yes, it may be possibly under some description frequently asked. And the other one is not frequently asked. It's a corner case, but it is a discrepancy in the rules that needs to be addressed.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm like I said, I'm on the most part, and this is going to sound incredibly, it's like my least favorite attitude now, but from my perspective is that I feel I understand the rules well enough now, at which point to just make judgment calls on interactions. And I might be wrong. You know, I'm fully accepting that I might be wrong, but I'll make a judgment call on a rule fitting in with the narrative of the other rules and just go, that sounds about right. And I'll stick with that. You know what? And until someone comes along compelling it the other way, like definitively saying this is 100% not right because of this reason, I'm just gonna be like, cool, I'm gonna play it this way because I think this is right. And ultimately, it doesn't really matter because a lot of these things are common corner cases. And if anyone doesn't know how ridiculous this is, Carlo, you probably have heard about it. And we're not going to go into this discussion, and I refuse to go into this discussion. But one of the things that has come up more recently with things like charging, and you can't invalidate charges and so on and so forth, is the suplex, which has been the talk of many a rule discussion more recently. If anyone doesn't know the suplex
is?
Right, well, the suplex, I'll explain, but I'm not going to go into the rulings of why this is, and in your own communities, in your own local areas, do your right thing. But if you have a predictable maneuvers or quaif, and someone declares a charge on your unit, yeah, ready, aim, fire ruling says if they're in the front arc, they charge in the front arc. It doesn't matter if the crossbows shift to then put you in the flank, you're still charging the front.
Okay.
You can do the free maneuver before they resolve the charge. So what you do is you're charging me in the front, and I move my unit, and I just rotate it 90 degrees, 180 degrees. So you still have to charge me in the front, but my front is now facing my side of the board. So you charge, you align to my front, which is now behind my unit, in front of the rest of my force, and you just end up charging.
What pairing of rulings gets you the maneuver?
Predictable maneuvers or quaif.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Because it's the same trigger as ready, aim, fire, and therefore you do maneuver before the charge resolves, but not before you've declared what arc you're in for the charge. So you can change where the arc then is, and you still have to charge that arc, and yeah.
Okay. I know we're not going to go into it, but I just wanted to check. Does predictable maneuvers not come when you declare an action?
Before you resolve. and unfortunately, declaring a target is not part of the resolution, which would be way better if it was. It would be infinitely better if you could declare the target of the charge as part of the resolution. Why that isn't in the rules, I haven't got a fucking clue. But yeah, the old red cloak problem, right? I'll charge that unit. I'll make it take a panic test. Oh, it's dead. But I want to charge that unit now. But you can't because you declared it on that unit. But it's dead. Yeah.
You know what?
Fucking annoying.
You know what? I actually think that it's not that crazy.
No, it's not. But it's annoying as all hell because it feels wrong.
Yeah, why though? If the maneuver's predictable, if the charge is predictable, you can see in your mind how it would be interesting. Okay, let's put it this way. It's not impossible that you could imagine the creation of a skirmisher unit.
Yes, I was about to say
whose
this.
actual role is that when they're charged, they like change the facing after the charge in some kind of way. Effectively meaning like, hey, this unit's charging at us, and they like kind of like they split, let the unit like charge through them, and then they like envelop back around, or like, you know, like effectively like I actually think that it's not the wildest logic breaker in terms of real charging.
Yep.
But yeah, okay, in terms of the rules, it feels super janky.
It does. It feels more janky because not only are you now engaged with my unit as you'd expect, you're doing a charge in the front, whatever, but your rear is now exposed to the entire rest of my army, and that's the biggest issue, really. And yeah, it's an odd one.
Cool.
Yeah. But yeah, so you know, rules and things like that not that important. The thing that matters most has got to be the balance updates. And releases. And releases they are managing, you know. I'm not going to sit here and say that they've done a bad job on releases because they actually haven't this last year. Releases have been pretty good. They released Hero Boxes 3 for the vast majority of factions, certainly the core factions from the olden days. They've had units come out for nearly every faction. There's only really one faction that's gone relatively unloved, which is Targaryens, with only Heroes 3 coming out, with basically no other options coming out for Targs. In fact, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. We've got Brazen Beast on the horizon. The Baratheons have had something both sides, you know. We've had stuff for Starks, even though it's sad. You know, yeah. We've had stuff for Starks, even though it's sad. Greyjoys has been a bit lackluster. Did get Heroes 2 at the start of the year. We've had anything else pretty sad. Lannisters have had stuff. It's crap stuff, but it's stuff. New hero box, the new
Martells are released and not released.
Martells, yeah. Free Folks had stuff. Problematic. Night's Watch have had Heroes 3. They've had Coldy, you know, finally added to the game. So on the most part, factions have seen releases. So not having like content in terms of the game has been there for you to have content. Some of that content sucks. Some of the units kind of suck, which is a problem. You know, that's a balance issue though, not a release issue per se.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a positive, I guess. Anything else? Nah, we were just waiting on the update now, aren't we? At which point everyone is expecting February, March.
It does feel like we're in that limbo time of year again. Like what are we? What are we waiting for? What are we hoping for?
But
what's next? Like,
but I will say this: if the update comes out February, March, April, that is kind of what people are saying in circles and being floated through the back alleys. If the update comes out then, my point actually is, aren't we slightly glad that they didn't give us 6 months of, it'll be out soon?
Yeah, true.
Because actually,
true.
One thing we asked was, don't give us 6 months of.
Yeah. I agree with that. I'm glad November didn't kick off with, you'll get some updates soon. Probably in
TM.
December, and then like actually like nothing comes out till March. Yeah, I mean, Joey said February or March based on what? Like, honestly, I don't believe anybody's fucking rumors ever.
No.
But Joey, 90% of it's based on wishful thinking.
Yep.
90% of it's based on a calendar where somebody counted when season 1 started and when they think they want or expect season 2 to start. I think that
the one thing I'll say, they are rumors.
Is there is a date in people's minds after which they're going to start rioting over the fact that it's been more than a year.
Yeah.
And they've pretty much put that date. Like, and then when other people ask, I think it'll happen here. And then that becomes a rumor that somebody else is like, somebody told me it's going to happen here. Yeah, they told you because that's what they hope, not because they have any inside information. And I think that that's just Chinese whispered into, oh, it's going to come out in February, March, or April.
Or June, or July.
3 months people basically count to being 1 year since 1 or 2 years since the start of season 1 or the start of 2001.
I will say that the rumors that I've heard, and they are rumors, they are 100% rumors. All the rumors I've heard have come from independent sources. More importantly, independent sources who don't actually know each other as well. And
they
some of them
speak to each other, Mickey. There are no fucking independent sources in this community.
But what I mean by that is one of the sources where I've been told something was at Seamon Expo. Someone was talking to a Seamon official at the Seamon Expo, and they'd said something. We've got people in the US saying that they've talked to people and they're in conversations. Do I believe any of it? No, I don't believe any of it. I can kind of see that there might be something, but I don't believe it's. I had someone saying it was going to be February. I don't believe it's going to be February whatsoever. I think you're realistically going to be looking at April if there is going to be one. But we will see. We will see. Anyway, we'll move finally away. We just end up talking for nearly an hour and a half just on Seamon. Jesus Christ. I said we'd look at the good, the bad, and the tall today, not the ugly. Carlo, are you ready to go through absolute hell?
Go on then. I have no idea what. I didn't think we had anything prepared for today, which is why I was waxing lyrical about Seamon. But go on.
There isn't that much prepared. So I'm just going to kick us off. And it's that time of year. It's the 2nd of January. And last night, the very first day of the year, someone sent me some pictures. So.
I've seen this.
There's a lot. So we are gonna go through this, and you're gonna suffer, and I love it.
They are phenomenal. On somebody's shelf. I mean, I think the red and blue and the yellow, like, it's a beautiful color scheme. It's very Bretonian-esque. Very nice. The work is brilliant. I just don't like it. Like, I genuinely don't want you to feel that opposite me on the table.
It's all detachable. All the models come out.
It is. That's true. As a showpiece, it's very nice. Honestly, I'd feel like I'd feel like too much of a bell end to ask. But like, my preferred choice would be to ask you to take them off that tray and just play them on a normal tray.
Which is fair.
It is phenomenal work, though.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. There's a lot more still to look at, and there's some cool stuff coming up. So
I've seen this. Now,
you'll probably notice a theme, Carlo. You're not just looking at a Baratheon army here, which was obvious because of Baratheon Wardens. Have you noticed another theme that you've seen in these pictures so far?
Not yet. Are they historical? Does it have a historical reference?
Not historical. It's a Game of Thrones. It's he's doubled down with the basing. specifically, obviously, the basing being the key thing for this. But there's something about the basing that he's left open for himself in the future to perhaps lower his workload.
No.
No, we'll keep going through it. It becomes very obvious later on. So we'll keep going through some of these stuff. Look at the. It's fantastic. Stephen says ruins. Yes, to some extent. Think about what ruins, perhaps, or perhaps anything else.
Ruins of the Sept. Like, there's a lot of Lannister heraldry in the ruins.
Right. Yes. So specifically, he
ruins of Casterly Rock.
He wanted to do like a slightly alternative timeline, basically. He's gone for a lot of heraldic patterns from different things. Yeah, some of them I think are probably Westeros based. Some of them just aren't. Some of them are just different. But he's gone for the theme of I am Stannis Baratheon, and I am the one true king of Westeros, and it's the sack of King's Landing if Stannis is successful.
Okay.
So, and the cool bit being is, of course, all the stuff has got Lannister heraldry on it. He said he kept his options open, so if he ever had to do a Lannister army, he would just use the same bases and just use just different models, because it would still fit being Lannister King's Landing. So there you go. Method to the madness.
It's exquisite work.
Yeah. Knights of Castle Rock over the bridge. Not Knights of Castle Rock, so Champions of Stag. I do actually like that. It's obviously got it's like a curve to the base, as if it was a hunchback of a bridge or something. I know you don't like height, but I feel that that could actually be somewhat nice to see on the table. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of extra added height.
Yeah, theme. I mean, I'm not a huge fan. Like, I guess people play on different mats and stuff anyway, so like sometimes that breaks the immersion anyway. And it, you know, when you go to a tournament, when you play somebody else's club or whatever, and like the mat is suddenly just like totally different to what you normally play on, then your bases often just look stupid anyway. But I've never been a fan of very like cobblestone heavy, a bit, you know, town center heavy bases anyway. Now, I do think that the bridge is nice work, nice, a nice touch. But yeah, and I agree with Stephen. Like, it's just too busy for me. Do you know what I mean? Like, I do think that this game, like a ton of what I like about this game, is the value of how clean it looks on the table. Now, I want the base within reason to like sink somewhat into the table. Like, what I want from a base, not for it to stand out and look high, and what I want is for the base to blend into the table, look the same, have the same colors, you know, be it browns and greens with maybe a tiny bit of snow here or there or whatever that is, and then make it feel like these models are actually sort of on the table, while still maintaining the fact that this base is a beautifully simple way of playing the game and moving units around. So for me, ruins is never a thing. But like as display pieces go, they are crazy good. What's that one supposed to be? That Stannis? That's the one true king Stannis? Like that to a god?
I believe is actually it's supposed to be Robert Baratheon. Okay.
I mean, now you're really breaking the immersion, because he's 3 times as big as a horse.
Yeah, that's how big Robert Baratheon was, right? That's what they said. He's big.
I don't think they cast him right in the TV show then.
Yeah. He's too small in the TV show. Yeah, it's supposed to be like I guess he could probably explain it better than I can, but I got the impression when I first saw it was almost like an Avatar of Cain style. Robert Baratheon's back from the dead to help put Stannis on the throne, kind of thing.
Okay.
And use it.
So that's why I said, like, is it? I mean, I know it's like got the Warhammer and stuff like that, but like when I was like, is that Stannis the one true king? Like, as in, like, if he's actually like ascended to godhood of the one true king, like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Demon host Stannis.
Yeah,
Demon
exactly.
Prince Stannis.
Demon Prince Stannis Baratheon.
I think he uses it. I don't know if he actually uses it in game. I'm guessing he uses it as a champion, Dragonstone Noble sometimes, or he just uses it as a display piece and has it there because he loves it. This one here, this is actually quite impressive. This is not a champion of the Stag or a Dragonstone Noble. It's a converted model from, I believe, a Knights of Castle Rock or something like that he's converted with a load of different bits. Obviously, the flail from Bolton Flame Man. I've actually got a picture.
I mean, the majority, like the horse is a Dragonstone Noble.
No, the horse is a Lannister, I think, or this might be the one he's building at the moment. But I think the other horse it might have been was No,
that horse is definitely a Dragonstone Noble.
This one.
This
one's a Knights of Castle Rock horse that he's converted, which is impressive. And then sneaky little Tyrion on the base as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll ask you the question. I know what the answer is going to be. Out of 10. Big fat 0 into. Okay.
It's a very big fat 0. There is a ton of work. It's very impressive. Very impressive.
Yeah. So thanks a lot for sending that across.
Yeah, no, it's super cool to see.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be great on the shelf.
Yeah, fair enough. He did actually mention as well, and you mentioned it earlier. He does have his nostalgic Warhammer Fantasy Battles Bretonia, kind of like.
Yeah, he's got. I mean, as soon as I saw the checkered red, blue, yellow, like I was like, this has got Bretonia vibes all over the shop.
So, yeah.
And then with random other heraldic insignia, then just like totally different thrown in. So Knights of the Realm, Bretonia. It's cool though.
Cool. It's really nice stuff. So thanks a lot for sending that in. And I'll read this out at last. So he found that your view on height of tray is inspirational. and he's the person who uses these is mostly a casual player and a hobbyist, but he enjoys tuning in to listen to the competitive discussions that we have, and he gets his competitive feel from what we say, while being a filthy casual. But yeah, no, it's awesome.
He ain't a casual painter,
hobbyist.
That's for sure. Yeah.
This is the point where he says, "Hi, half a day."
Modeler, builder.
Yeah.
Like, it's really, really cool stuff. Really, really high level of skill going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Entirely wasted, but you know.
Passion projects, and you gotta love a good passion project.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that, SMD. I don't know SMD's actual name, so SMD is all I've got to go on. But thanks a lot for sending that in. All right then. So, that's basically it in terms of content. In terms of what we're going to discuss today, we're just nattering on. It's the new year. What we're looking forward to. That was the last thing I was going to say, Carlo. What are we looking forward to? It's got to be an update. Should one come out? LGT this year, which has been announced last week. That Paul Winter from Chelmsford Bunker is going to be running that. There's no other news on the LGT front, but Paul Winter, the guy who runs Chelmsford Bunker events, is going to be running LGT. I assume he's going to be putting a team together to help him do that. Awesome stuff. Always Winter in March. Start like the next big thing that I think myself and you are preparing for. And we should probably look at the book of hotels and see if Chris is actually definitely coming up the day before. No, just slum it.
That's a day before job as usual.
I'm sure we'll find someone with a penknife just casually stored in the side drawer or something. LVO obviously is the actual first big tournament of the year. We've got the Spanish team event happening as well.
Mm.
Is that
Mm.
late January, February? Can't remember the dates on that exactly. But that's gonna come up anyway as an event, certainly that's not small. So yeah, then we've got and after that I don't really know what we've got after that really.
Now I guess somewhat waiting on some kind of US Nationals
Announcement.
announcement.
Yeah, LVO mentioned that.
Yeah, I mean, like honestly, the pairing with Frontline really says, like you really should be working toward LVO being your nationals culmination, with the
Yeah.
circuit being your qualification. Like that's what I would do.
Yep.
But that is effectively what 40K is, right? Like it's not called nationals, but LVO is the biggest 40K event in the Americas. And like all the circuits and regionals and build-up events all point towards LVO being the culmination of the season. So yeah, but obviously they've missed the boat for that being nationals for 2022.
Yeah.
I mean, the question is are you happy to run LVO at the end of January and call it the Nationals Championship of the year before?
I don't think that's a problem.
No, I don't think it is. I think it's better than calling it the National Championship of the year that it's in. Because you shouldn't really hold your National Championship in the first month of the year, really. So,
no.
Yeah. But
the team tournament is in Zaragoza is happening on the same weekend as LVO, so that's interesting. We've also got the Great Canadian Open happening not this weekend but the weekend after, so that's a week and a bit, which is Ariakas and the guys over there in Mini Wargaming running that event, which I hope is going to be really good. It's on the smaller as kind of like national level events. It's obviously quite small. With Canada only getting I think 20 players for that, but I really hope it goes really well. And obviously massive respect for the Canadian guys and the events up there. And yeah, everything else apart from that is just odd things there and there. Captain Connor's supposedly got some stuff going on as well in the US that might be quite big. There's a lot of stuff
Captain Con is running 3 different events over the 3 days: a 30-pointer, a 40-pointer, and maybe another 40 or even a 50.
There's a 24-man event happening in Daventry as well in February, which I know that Paul is going to be travelling to. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So we did have obviously we should actually probably say you won the negative ELO event, which is thumbs up for you, Carlo. Well done for winning negative ELO. You are a right neg.
It was a game played slightly behind closed doors. I don't even know why, but just me and Larks both. The game had to be played very, very quickly. The round was announced on Monday, and I was leaving to go to Ireland on Thursday. And me and Larks were like, "When are you free?" And we were like, "I'm free tomorrow night." So we just played the next day, and then we both came onto the game and was like, kind of just be easier if this wasn't streamed. And we were like, yeah, sure. We were both just like, yeah, that's a bit less fresh air, shall we say. So
I tend to agree.
Yeah. So I mean, we both just kind of, and it was good that it wasn't, because it was actually fraught with quite a few technical issues.
You played on a Tuesday night.
I got that terrible thing where I was kicked out of the game and then I came back in, but then from then on, I couldn't see any of the
UIs.
tokens, any of the UI of the units, right? So then it took us a long time to replace every unit on the map, right? We even tried to restart the game a couple of times, load it from a saved game. No, from then on, I could never find the UI.
There is a fix.
Hack.
There is a fix for that. A console code you can put in, it reloads the UI.
There we go.
Lua script. It is in. It's available on one of the Discord channels, the Bartender Discord channel for maintaining the mod. You can force reset it.
But yeah, it was an incredibly interesting game. He had an incredibly interesting list.
And you just went and killed it?
What's that?
Did you try and kill it, or did you just ignore killing it and score points?
No, I mostly ignored killing it. But like, I tried to pressure him. Like, so he set up incredibly defensively in the corner with like literally his catapult in the corner of the table, pikemen, and then the rangers kind of like blocking it and protecting it, and I sort of spread. He also put a palisade directly in front of himself.
Mhm.
I knew that killing it was incredibly dangerous, particularly because of his because of the fact that he has core, right? So actually, what he's trying to do is he's trying to draw you in, and then once you're sucked in to fighting him, he then sacrifices core and pins you down, and then just like pummels you with everything that he's got.
Mhm.
I do. So what I did instead, luckily, it was a 3 objective game mode and not something weird like Feast for Crows or whatever. I decided to play. I decided to play Andrew, mostly because of the use of Davos. So Davos switches off a ton of things in that matchup. It switches off shields. It switches off Watcher on the Wall. Also switches off Set for Charge from the Stone Shadow Tower Spearman.
Also,
but the general
DSNs are actually really hard for Resist to kill.
Yes, this is actually the real deciding factor, which was that DSN is an absolute nightmare for him. So if the DSNs can get great value, then the matchup is very good for me. So I looked to pressure him and moved aggressively into the board. That actually the point of that was to force him to shrink back into the corner and maintain being in the corner. And then once I'd shrunk him into the corner, I then just looked to survive and control 2 tokens. It was incredibly close, though. He did eventually come out of the corner and make some aggressive moves at a very good timing. He basically set up that, like, he did suck me in eventually. He left open the ability for my Kingsmen to charge him. So I took it on, and then he sacrificed Corin at the start of the next round once he had me engaged. I survived enough. Like, I was on full health, and then he, like,
basically killed
stone
you.
throws me. Actually, the thing I had forgotten and actually slightly had miscalculated and nearly cost me the game was the fact that when he had, and now his watch ended, on his catapult, that when he sacrifices core and he can trigger, and now his watch is ended. That's actually the thing that I forgot. That is a dead unit, and I forgot that he could trigger that on his choice effectively, and that he's not only sacrificing Corin to shut me off, he's sacrificing it to gain a double tap with the catapult at that time. So yeah, I mean, like there were some things. It was an incredibly cagey game, an incredibly tough game to play for both of us, and it went down to like some dice at the end. It was super close. He could have killed me with precision on a Dragonstone Noble, which he took from Clash of Kings commander card. And he got super unlucky that he didn't, basically. And if he did, then he wins the game, and if he doesn't, then he loses the game. And instead, he, as the Dragonstone Noble really wants to do, it tempted him or sucked him into doing 2 wounds, not 3. And then suddenly, you're absolutely fine. You're more dangerous than ever. But yeah, it was a super good game. I was very pleased to win, not just that game, but the whole tournament. To me, it's sort of like I haven't had brilliant tournament results over the past 6 months, but I'd been telling myself that it's because I refuse to play the current meta. Like that's what I tell myself. In my mind, it's that I refuse to play what I currently think is bullshit, right? and believe that I still have very good game fundamentals and very good understanding of the meta. Even if I choose not to take advantage of it, I still understand it. So, at least fell within my own narrative that when you take away the meta as the current thing that I choose not to participate in, that I'm able to do well in a still a strong, tough environment. So, I was very pleased from that perspective. I felt like, I decided that I was going to go to French Nationals and really go for it. And then in the build up, through seeing the actual results in LGT and all those things, that actually I'd just become incredibly disillusioned with the top end of the competitive game. That I just thought it was like the result. I just felt like the results of LGT followed by the results of Polish Nationals were just a total fucking shit show as far as the competitive side of the game goes. And I didn't want to be a part of that problem.
You definitely entered neg zone number 1. Definitely, like numero uno. Fuck this shit, basically. When it came to balance,
which I've never been in before, even when Othel was around. Yeah. Even when Othel was around, in my opinion, there were counters. There were things that could give him a 60-40 game, and I think that there is not a single thing close to Mance in the game. And so I was just like, whatever. I was just like, I'll just play this painted army.
Mm-hmm. Which is fair enough. Right.
So not to rant about it, but I was very, very pleased that this tournament went that way, because it was the first time that I looked at the game with a fresh mentality. And under that fresh mentality, I said, I think this can win. And then also actioned up on that plan, showing that I still can actually play the game on the table now and again as well, rather than just talking about it and thinking about it.
That's fair. Just a very, very again, look at the stats here. Martel's highest win rate. Greyjoy's had a decent one, but low games numbers. Baratheon's 50%, but I think the big one for me is the Lannisters being down there at 38%, which was the threat of red cloak spam and kind of panic spam and things like this just didn't materialize as being as. Mm-hmm. I shouldn't say that it doesn't, feeling bad and having an effect on the game, whatever. Doesn't win games. That's the thing. Doesn't win games.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I was nervous. I was nervous to have to play because I played. I was nervous to have to play into Jacob because Jacob played Larks and I played Hibiscus in the semis. I preferred the Larks matchup. I think even though I have Olenna, there's still still don't like that double Hedge Knight, double Rose Knight list into that. In the game in general, because you still can't turn off a swords Joffrey play at the start of the round.
Yeah.
Until you've activated an NCU. So still incredibly dangerous, still incredibly explosive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I played 4 different Night's Watch armies. All very, very different to each other, and some were pretty close. I mean, most of those games were pretty close, but nobody played Free Folk. No, nobody played Free Folk. There's almost no units that they're legally allowed to pick. I mean, there are some, but
I spent about 3 seconds looking and went, nope, not because of units, but because of other things. Just didn't look fun. Play Bear Riders and only Bear Riders, and then not have Rattleshirt, for example, which seems bizarre. All right, so we have one thing I did want to mention. We have the Farewell to 2022, which just kicked off. It just ended up being 31 players, and that's currently going. this is supposed to be like a farewell to the meta, and it's actually incredibly well balanced on faction picks. And I know this is only 31 players, so 16% is not a huge percentage. But the fact that you've got 5 factions at 16%, followed by Greyjoys slightly behind at 10, and then like 1 each of Free Folk, Targ and neutral. Targs just nobody wants to play Targs.
Quite interesting. Like, it is interesting that the tournament was successful. 31 people. It was only initially, put up for 16.
Yep.
31 people wanted to play in it, which is, I know the negative ELO was actually a little bit oversubscribed, ending up at a 32-player event. This one's a little bit under at 31, but it was originally posted for 16. People, this is billed as a last competitive event of the change. People wanted to see, or I thought the narrative was people wanted to see how Martells match up into the current meta. And what we've ended up with is nobody's playing the current meta. So there is nothing for Martells to match up into. I mean, maybe Barras. Somebody might be playing meta Barra, but there is really no Mance. I mean, it's D1 playing Troll Free Folk, right?
Mate, it's worse than Troll Free Folk. He forgot to change his lists before they locked their Uber Troll Free Folk.
No, he's playing Giants, right? And Bears.
He's playing. This list is like fine to a point. Like it's a fine list, but this list is it's Rattleshirt, Spearwise, Double Bear Riders, Mag, Mance, Steer. Like it's a 6. This is just a categorically terrible idea.
Mark's made it to the final of the Neg ELO after accidentally only putting in one list. So
yeah,
at least he has 2 different lists. So let's give him that. Free Folk in the final. Anyway, I think it's interesting that we're not seeing the Martell into Mance, the Martell into Drogo, the Martell into,
You've got Eldon, you've got Kevin, you've got John, you've got Eddard. These are all things that meta. Even Baylor comes in.
I'm not saying the lists are weak. I'm not saying people aren't taking it competitively. Just interesting that the real things that people have complained about for a long time are not even present to see the matchup into Martells. So interesting that even when that's what the tournament was billed as and was going to be that in my mind, people don't want to play them. So I guess that shows the real exhaustion with them.
I also think it's because I think there's a lot of people who talk the talk and very few people who can walk the walk with it.
Except every single person at LVO and every single person in Poland. Sorry, every single person at LGT and every single person in Poland.
But they're also not the people who talk the talk. You know what I mean? Like, the people who talk the talk are not the same people as the people who walk the walk. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're different people.
Yes and no.
I think they are. Yeah, I had no desire. I mean, the way I put it is so simple as if I was going to enter, it definitely wouldn't be with Mance unless someone specifically asked. But because, what's the point? For me, I don't see the point. And this number here, doesn't go up very much when I play Mance into 3 or 4 people, of which the chances are 2 or 3 of those people I'm going to be better than anyway, just skill alone, regardless of builds. So realistically, you're only going to be playing against 2 people who are of inverted commas equal skill. In the same kind of area that you'd hope them to be. And then you're also playing a build that's just infinitely better than them and than theirs. And it's like, well, this is down to my mistakes, and if I'm not stupid, I won't lose. And I don't want to play that unless someone says play that, or if I'm going to go and win a tournament that I care about winning. I don't really care about winning this event. I'm not going to enter. I was going to enter Greyjoys if I was going to enter, but I've got a busy January, unfortunately. So yeah, don't know. I just think that you said it yourself. You actually said it yourself. What's the point in playing Mance? There isn't one anymore, is there? Because once you've won something, it's like, well, I've done that now. There's no point in doing it
I
anymore.
mean, it didn't stop you for like a year. Suddenly your tunes just entirely changed.
No, not at all. Because there was something to win back then.
Right.
Like, you didn't stop playing Targs, because you'd played them once. You stopped playing Targs when you'd won with them. Well, specifically won your goal with them, or achieved your goal with them. I had a goal with what I wanted to do, and I achieved the goal.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
it.
I mean, my goal was to win a tournament.
Yeah.
I played a tournament, I won. I changed faction, I played a different tournament, I won.
Yeah.
Changed faction.
That was
a very specific, like, that was a very different goal to what most people have, right? Like,
oh yeah, 100%. But like everyone's got their own goals, right? So depending on what those goals are, and if again going out there and playing, say, absolute Mance. If anyone hasn't seen, though, Martels are falling. Allah's still good. Martels are falling. Back down. But playing Mance and stuff.
But you talk about free folk like Mance is the only commander that you're allowed to pick.
No, you can pick other stuff as well.
You could easily play any other commander at any time.
Yes.
Right, but
yeah. But the thing is that a lot of what gets complained about, and a lot of what people talk about, is not Mance. A lot of it's actually just straight up free folk. So again, what's the point if you're gonna have OP stuff? And again, I've got no you're allowed to not play in stuff because you just don't think it's worth the effort.
True, but whatever. I actually don't really you're making a really weird point that I don't really, which I think is completely
what point do you think I'm trying to make?
Completely at odds with your actual actions, which is what I actually find really weird. Like,
what point do you think I'm trying to make? Because my point is I basically don't play free folk at the moment.
Like, you don't play Mance.
Not
feels
anymore,
like the point.
No.
You don't play overpowered stuff.
No.
It seems to be the point that you're like me.
And my point is I don't play Mance anymore.
Okay. Right.
Which I don't. Unless someone specifically requests it, I will not play it.
Cool.
Because there's no point.
Genuine question. Do you think that's worth, do you think that requires announcement?
No.
Do you actually think that
No, I don't.
Okay. Because I mean, I just in my opinion, and everybody has incorrect opinions of themselves. Most people self-reflection is the hardest part, right?
100%.
In my opinion, I change faction on a whim, right? I just pick factions, do whatever, right? I don't need to announce that I am or am not playing something. Other people are far more interested in what I'm playing than I am interested in it. At the moment, for the longest period in a long time, I am playing Baratheons with some dedication.
Yeah.
For that, I had switched continuously, every couple of months at most. People will ask what I'm taking to the next tournament, and I'm not trying to be elusive. I'm just I don't know. It's just whatever I feel like maybe painting a unit for, I'll paint that unit and then play that. But you played Free Folk for a period of 3 years. And more specifically, for the past 2 years, you played nothing but Mance.
Pretty much.
While complaining that Mance was an issue that got too much hate, got XYZ.
Okay.
And yet, at any given time, you could have just played a different Free Folk commander. You constantly say, "Oh, I don't have a different army." You had all the commanders. You have commanders. You can choose not to play them at any given time. And you say that you had this goal in mind. Effectively, you're saying, "I want to win France." And yet, for 2 years before France was ever even announced, you still played Mance.
It wasn't 2 years, was it?
The what's that?
It wasn't 2 years, really, because it was the best part of 6 months since the balance came out. And before that, it wasn't the boogeyman that you'd make it sound like. And then
No,
back
but you
then,
did, but like, okay, it's an entirely different balance patch. But like, he was the #1 commander then within the faction, and you played him then,
within the
right?
faction, definitely.
You did, yeah, okay. So you played him the entirety of this edition.
Yep.
And the entirety of the edition before.
Yep.
Right. So you played Mance for about 2 years.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying that there are tons of other commanders that you could have ever taken to another tournament. And you didn't once play something other than Mance at a tournament.
I did play multiple other commanders other than Mance at tournaments, but I played Steer, Varamir. I didn't end up playing Harmer. I didn't end up playing Rattleshirt.
These are one-offs ever.
No, like
versus,
a couple of games of Varamir in the new patch, and a couple of games of Steer, at least. But I mean,
I actually last time you were going on about how Mance was a problem, I actually went and looked at your profile and counted your tournament results, and there wasn't anything but Mance for the past 6 months.
Okay.
You hadn't played any other commander.
Okay.
In tournaments.
Okay. I mean, I've also done that, and I have a log of it written down because I write down what I play and when I play it now. But yeah, like, it's fine, whatever. Point is,
I mean, there's a log of it on your profile, like, you know.
Yeah, I know. And I've got
anybody in the chat, go look next week. Tell me if it's a lie.
No, it's fine.
Honestly, I might be lying. Mickey might be lying. Somebody has to be lying. In the past, in season 1, has Mickey played in a tournament anything other than Mance?
It doesn't say if it's a tournament game anymore, does it? It used to come up with tournament game at the top or the bottom. Ugh, absolute nightmare. I'd have to check through the actual.
But anyway, so like, you know, I just I don't know. My point being, you were getting at, other than like, so like, I think that attitude is incredibly wrong about the game. Like, so it's like, all right, so basically, I can play Mance or I can not play. Was basically what you were saying. Like, to me.
Oh, like, right, okay, but that's not what I said, though, is it?
You were literally like, so I'm not gonna play Mance, so I'm not gonna play. I don't care about the tournament. I don't care about the tournament. So okay, but like that's what the between the lines sentence was. Like, I'm not saying I wasn't.
You didn't listen to what I actually said. I said I didn't. Like, someone didn't want me to play Mance. No one asked me to play Mance, so I was going to enter with Greyjoys. And then I can't enter because I've got a busy January. Like, that's the reason I'm not entering. I'm not entering any tournaments in January.
What you said was,
that's exactly what I said, Carlo.
No,
oh well, doesn't matter.
What you said was, I don't care about winning this tournament, so I won't enter with Mance.
No, that's way after my initial statement. Like, I don't care about winning the tournament, so I'm not going to enter with Mance, is only off the back of someone saying, if I wanted to win the tournament, I'd still enter with Greyjoys, right? But if someone's to turn around and say, oh, you're going to win this tournament because of X, Y, Z, if someone was to say this is hyper competitive, like, you're going to win, then I'll go, right, okay, in which case we'll bring the big guns out, right? In the same way that other people would bring the big guns out. Like, I'm not the only one who looked at this event and said, people don't really want the big guns, though. You know? So, we just, conscious decision, it's not just myself, you know, conscious decision to go, well, if we're going to enter, we're not going to enter with the strongest stuff, and we're going to try and do it with something that's not the strongest. So. Yeah. Yeah, doesn't matter.
Yeah, so National like, I genuinely, so this is the thing, like, I pretty much never call Mickey up on playing Mance, right? Because I actually don't believe that there's an issue with playing Mance, choosing to play Mance. I do not have an issue with that. I actually have an issue with Mickey portraying himself as some kind of martyr, that he won't play Mance anymore for the good of the community after having for 2 years. Like, you know, the good of the community was fucking 9 months ago. That's when you should have stopped playing him. And it's the way you discuss the issue and portray the issue, which is the only thing that I have a problem with people
That's fair enough.
about, like, there is imbalance. It is known that Mance is powerful.
Mhm.
I think it's okay to still play powerful things. I still think that you can feel that you can play whatever you want. You can make whatever challenges you want out of the game.
Yep.
Mickey has long claimed he couldn't play anything other than Mance because Mance is by far the most powerful thing. And it's like, well, no. I mean, you can play other commanders. You
Yeah,
could
of
have
course
played
you can.
any other commander at any time. I have a pop at him for using Mance all the time. Maybe.
He has a pop move for everything, Chris. You know that.
Yeah, I do. Like, I do, Chris. You know what I mean? I have a pop at him for doing everything. But
not
but when
surprised.
like, but I just have a big issue with the way that you portray the issue and your role in playing Mance.
No,
Because
I think you're reading far too much into it.
About the problem, the way people speak about the problem is what either makes it worse or makes it better.
I think you're reading far too much into it. I
read a lot into it. Yeah, I do. I read a lot into people's actual actions.
Yeah.
More than their words, right? Like,
and the thing is,
if certain things, when I say them, I will fucking do them no matter what, right? Like, so, you know, I say I take 2 lists to a tournament and I play 2 different commanders, and pretty much I will basically always play them both. I will always play them both, even to the point where I know that it's a fucking stupid decision. Insert France. Second to last round, I've still only played John. Well, I now see an opportunity where Othel might not lose. I'm going to play him. Because you know what? I believe I die by the fucking sword, like, that 2 commanders should be better. And so I will always do it. But then, like, I feel
I still believe that 2
your
commanders
actions are completely at odds with the things that you say on Tourney ground.
I think the thing is, I think that's a massive bastardization of having an opinion versus having to follow through on that opinion, because you have some kind of internal compass that says I must always uphold this position that I set myself to. You say you should always take 2 commanders to an event, which I agree with. You should always take 2 different commanders. I do believe that. But I also don't believe that you should go into a game and go, you know what? You said this yourself there. You've got a chance of using the second list, so you're going to try it. And it may have been a good option or a bad option. But if you're knowingly making a bad decision, then you can be content with that decision if you're knowingly making a bad one, right? But that doesn't actually prove anything. Like, that's you proving to yourself. It doesn't say anything to me. It's not like, oh my god, you're such kind of like an amazing person for using 2 commanders. No. I'm just like, yeah, you made a bad decision, Carlo. You're a fucking idiot. That's why I look at it. Like, I don't know why you ran that list. I think that's a stupid ass decision. But that's the thing. That's a personal thing. Nothing more than personal.
What I prove to myself is when I say things on Tourney ground, I mean them.
But that's only to yourself.
And that matters to me. Like, it matters to me that the things that I say on Tourney ground are things that I actually mean. Like, if I think something's bullshit, I'll say it's bullshit. If I think something's fine, I'll say it's fine.
But like, I don't understand your point at this point, because it's like,
because I feel like what you say about Mance is wildly different to what you like actually think about and do about Mance. And like, you know, you say things like, oh, you know, oh, the community's really tired of Mance, they've had enough, whatever, and you'll say that, and then you'll play Mance, and it's like, well, then like you know, like you acknowledge there's this big problem, and then you just go and become part of it.
Well, it depends on personal goal, right? Which all this started off. My goal was to win France. My goal was to win LGT or the Invitational. That went well. And then because we'd said we'd go to France afterwards, I thought, right, well, I'll go there with the same stuff and see how that pans out. And I won that. I don't have anything more to do with that with Mance now. so I don't want to play Mance. I'll play other stuff in Free Folk maybe, but the simple truth of the matter is people complain about Free Folk just as much as they complain about Mance. Not everybody, but people complain about the faction just as much, so I'm just going to play a different faction. Hence the reason I don't play a Free Folk. I play a different faction now. There just hasn't been a tournament since that point. And I haven't won anything prior to that of any real major success. Unlike yourself, who, just goes to a tournament and wins with whatever they want. So, like, it's easy for you to say, oh, I just do this and I can prove myself constantly. But, like, for other people, them doing that thing takes them longer, and it's more of an achievement for them to reach that point, because they aren't some kind of star-studded cast like you are, who just achieves their goals immediately all the time, right? Like, that's the difference, is that you're kind of holding everybody else to your moral code and your system of how to play. And this isn't just true for me, right? It's true for a lot of other players out there, is that if they want to play something, they should be allowed to play it. They can understand that it's a problem. They can understand that there's an issue behind it, but that doesn't mean that they don't have to stop playing it, right?
Okay,
in the same way that, like,
this is what I'm saying, Mickey.
Yeah.
Right. Is that I've never said that people can't play XYZ, right? They can't maintain a separate opinion on it, right? So you can't sit on Tourney ground and say things like Mance isn't that bad, or these Free Folk hunters aren't wildly overpowered, guys. They're actually kind of okay.
That's a separate topic, but
is wildly at odds with, like, you basically downplay the role of him for a long time. You even said things like, coming into the LGT, you'd be like, guys, just wait. Mance isn't even going to do very well at the LGT.
I didn't think he did.
His rating's going to plummet. And it's like, no. That was the first time we actually saw just how dominant he was. But
yeah, I was wrong. I'm allowed to be wrong.
More importantly, I think that what I was trying to get at is based on your original comments, which Evan, somewhat agreeing with back there, which is that you said that you would have entered with Greyjoys only because you don't care about winning. Is that I think it's a very toxic attitude to be like, do I care about winning? If yes, insert most powerful thing in the game. If not, don't bother playing. And like I'm
sorry like, that was the read.
I think that people need to see the game as a challenge that they can overcome, like, in so many different ways. And if winning isn't a huge goal to you, then, like, there are so many other challenges that you can take on. For the vast majority of the people, that is just do as well as they can.
Yes.
But, like, but if you're already doing well, then it's there are plenty of ways to, like, take that a notch down and play other things, play other commanders within Free Folk, play another faction. Like, another faction's are only an option for some people, and a thing that you claim that you didn't have an option for years, and yet you always had the option to play other commanders. You always chose not to. Always chose to play man.
Right, okay. Whatever. But there's a historical reason for that, right? In that I hadn't actually achieved anything.
I don't think it's styling on somebody if you play with a handicap. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to level the playing field. You're trying to make the game even.
Which is true. No, I'm sorry that was the read you took away from it. I'm sorry that is. I'm sorry that that's the way that it came across. Because apparently it's poorly worded from myself. I shall watch my words next time I talk about it. Yeah, I'll.
It's a tournament you care about winning. I mean, you should care about winning every tournament. Depends what you mean by care about winning. It's a toxic attitude that winning is the only thing that matters. Like, you should be trying to win and care about winning at all tournaments, in my mind. You should want to win, but but it is win at all costs if you're willing to sacrifice willing to sacrifice. Okay, so this is how I see it. This is this moral code that I hold myself and other people to. It is win at all costs if I'm willing to sacrifice things that I've said on tourney ground to now suddenly try and win a tournament. It's win at all costs if I've said this, like XYZ, you should play 2 commanders. It's better for the game. It's better for all these things. You should play both of them. You shouldn't just bring a fucking joke list and a real one. Like anything that I've said in the past, if I then go to a tournament and make an act choice that suddenly I'm like, yeah, that doesn't matter though. What matters is winning the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's win at all costs, because like I'm winning at the cost of the integrity of things that I've said. And it could, and if I go there and I know the cost is my opponent not having fun, then that's also bridging on the, that leaning into the idea. It's a gray area, but it's a gray area of win at all costs, because I know that what I'm about to do, totally my opponent won't have fun. And that's also bordering on win at all costs. And like that's different to wanting to win.
I don't know what your point you're making now, but yeah.
That
I'm sorry that
okay.
That's pissed you off.
My point is that there's a difference between winning and being a toxic win at all costs kind of player.
Oh yeah,
and
there is.
My moral code, which you pointed out, is what I play by.
Yeah.
Says that if you don't follow through on the things that you talk about to the community, then that is.
But there's a difference between having an opinion on something and like having an opinion on something like an ideology or a point of order or something like that is very, very different to when it comes to actually playing the game, right? In that, like, 2 lists is fine. And again, I stand by the fact you should run 2 different lists. But if the situation to pick that second list, is never comes up, that doesn't mean you should have to use it, right? That's not. I've never said you should use both lists in an event. My point is you should enter with 2 lists, and you should feel that you have the opportunity to pick that second list. Otherwise, it's a bad second list. The opportunity didn't arise itself, so you don't take that second list as a second list again. There's a reason why the second list I've taken to all these events is different every time, because I feel like every time I've gone to the event, I haven't found the game which I didn't think the second list would play into. That's me being honest. That's me sticking to that system. It's just that I'm also not going to, because I'm still trying to win events. Yeah, I'm trying to do the best I can. I look at the game and I go, this is not the situation for this second list to shine, so I'll pick my first list. And I think that that's just correct opportunity cost. That's just correct play. Now, I agree that that's a problem nowadays when something basically can't lose a game. I do think that's a problem. But yeah, I think it's ridiculous to say you should have to play both lists unless you're going to an event.
No,
where you have
again, you're picking up on that's not
just one of many things.
What I'm saying here. That's what I'm saying. That's a very specific, actionable, provable, shall we say, point which I live by, right? And I know that I'm taking the L to live by that, right? Like I know, not that I'm taking the L in terms of I will lose the game, but that I am taking risks to maintain the fact that I believe that, and therefore I live by it and play by it. What I'm saying is that and people are saying, Mickey should be able to, or top players should play Mance, right? And that and that therefore proves the problem, right? And I do agree, right? Yeah, and that's to be very clear, thing that I was pulling Mickey up on and having a go about was not at all that he played Mance and won these events. It was now, in my opinion, that he was making it quite clear that he's now like sacrificing himself to not win events by not playing Mance anymore. And that like, oh, he doesn't care about winning anymore, so therefore he just won't play. And it's this idea that if you're not going to play the most overpowered thing in the game and try and win, or no, let's be really clear about the wording because we're being very nitpicky.
We are.
Specific people are saying, if you're not going to play the single most overpowered thing in the game and make your chance of winning the most clear-cut, undisputable, expected outcome, and to have no fucking challenge in any game because you play the best thing in the entire game and you've played it the longest and you have the most experience playing into the mirror matchups and you have no fucking challenges because there is no hard counter to it, then you might as well not play and you might as well not try.
Which is not, again, not what I said.
You gave when you said, I don't care about winning, so I'm not going to play Mance. And you know what? I can't be bothered to play Greyjoys because I'm kind of busy. Is the sentiment you were giving off in that initial discussion.
Fair enough.
That
again, it's not actually what I said, though, is it? And that's the thing. It's the sentiment I give off. But like, but for me, it was a case of.
Honestly, I mean, it's a long time ago. A long time ago, but is that not what it felt like Mickey was saying?
I'm going to say
exclusively. Did it not feel like he basically said, I'm not trying to win, so I'll not bother? And like, if I was trying to win, I'd play Mance, obviously, but nobody asked me to come and play Mance, so I'll not bother, is what I heard. And like, and it's the idea.
Fair enough.
It's not the playing of Mance. It's the idea that if you're not going to play Mance, you might as well not fucking bother, which is what I have the real issue with.
Which is not at all what I said.
The main challenge. Joey's talking about a new topic. I mean, it would be. It's the end of the show.
It's the end of the show. This is the end of the show. We need to pick up something said and take it to the extremes.
Well, you know,
I simply said that if I was going to enter the competitive event and I was going to win, right? I was going to set out with the objective of winning. Then I would be stupid not to pick Mance, right? From a competitive perspective, right? I want to challenge myself by not playing Mance, right? That is exactly what I want to do. I don't want to play Mance anymore. I'm not going to play any Mance anymore. If I was going to enter the event, I wouldn't play Mance unless someone said play Mance because we want to see how Martel's running it, right? I'm not going to do that unless someone says that specifically because there's no point in doing that. Because the chances are, like I said, that the chances are that either myself or Jacob, if we ran Mance, we'd probably just win. And that isn't because there would be no threat. There are very good players out there running, probably pretty decent lists, but the odds would be in our favour, right? The difference being is that we don't want to do that. We want to enter and make it more difficult, right? I don't care about winning the tournament from a you must go into this tournament and you must win it because there's so many things on the line. What I care about is going into the tournament and performing at my best with a different faction. The goal... Can
we just stop there? At what point does a tournament become you must go into this tournament and you must win because everything's on the line?
Arguably there isn't. Arguably there isn't.
There is no tournament in which case that exists.
But you know if you're going to something like a nationals event, right? Where for example, LGT, you know that there are going to be other players there doing exactly the same thing as you. Their intent is to go and win the LGT, and they will take the strongest thing to go and do it with it, right? You know that. You factually know that before going in, because every major event is going to be like that. So, and when the strongest thing happens to be the thing that you own and the thing that you play, you would be deliberately hampering your chances of doing so, right? So you go in and you play the thing you want to play, combined with the fact that it also happens to be the strongest thing, right? For this event...
So basically you're saying if there are other competitive players there, then now this is an event that you have to win and everything's on the line?
No.
So what is this thing? Like, you seem to think that there's some kind of distinction. Whereas this is the thing.
Specifically, it's an event that matters.
There's ever a distinction.
Right, it's an event that matters, right?
Every game, but it doesn't massively mean more or less to me than the next game.
So if you went to the World Championships, I'll give you some Stark lists with Mage Mormon and Rickard Karstark.
I wouldn't play them down the club. This is the thing.
But
I hold to my word. I play competitive lists down the club.
Yeah, exactly,
they mean as much to me as the tournaments do.
Yeah, exactly.
I play more troll lists in tournaments than I do down the local club.
Yeah, yes. But the point is that when
big tournaments matter no more to me than any other game.
No.
Because I inherently believe that every game is of equal value.
Yes. And the thing is, I agree there, but in the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you are turning up to an event, right? To put it in perspective, right? Are you happy with your performance at Always Winter last year?
Yes.
Cool. Awesome. Did it matter?
Did what matter?
Did your performance at Always Winter last year matter for you? Now.
Well, in what sense? Like, what do you mean to me?
Yeah.
Personally?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it matters.
Okay. Does it matter now, yeah? I assume it matters now.
In what sense?
Right, as in, like, do you remember that time and go, oh, that mattered, or not?
No.
You can put, because you can put different...
I don't look back on it and think it matters.
Because the thing is that you're saying that
I've played 5 or 6 tournaments since it.
Yeah,
I can't remember most of the games that I played in that tournament. Yeah. I don't remember it.
Yeah. So
the only game that I remember is the game that I lost, which is pretty much the only games that I ever remember. I only remember the games that I lose.
It's absolutely fine. But therefore, winning an event isn't of an importance to you. Like, winning an event to you is actually irrelevant because every game is equal.
If I play with the most powerful thing, it's totally irrelevant.
No. Winning an event is irrelevant.
It completely matters not to me. What I want to achieve is winning as an underdog.
Right, but winning an event is irrelevant to you, right? Because no game is more important than any other.
Roughly speaking, yes.
Right. But that's your system, is that your system is saying winning an event isn't relevant. Other people have different opinions. Other people would say winning an event matters to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's it. That's simply it. Sometimes winning an event does matter a little bit more. And I'm not going to sit here and say that, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say that winning is always irrelevant. But, like, for some people, they want to set out to win an event. And they're going to go, right, I want to win this event. And I'm going to do so by taking the things I want to take. And also, they happen to be strong. Like, people want to win with, say, Baratheon, because it's their faction. I've always wanted to win events with Free Folk. And I'm very lucky that Free Folk are currently very strong. Right? Very lucky. But I've not gone away and gone, oh, well, it's the best thing in the game, like I picked up Offal last year. I didn't, right? I didn't pick up Offal and go, oh, I'm going to win with Offal because it's the strongest thing. I took the thing that I thought was the strongest that I could use, and I tried to win with it. And it's the same time this year. All I'm talking about with this event is that I'm not approaching it from I am going to win this event with the strongest thing in the game. I'm not taking it from that approach. I'm taking it, if I'm going to enter, I'm going to enter with something that I haven't won the game with, something that is weaker to challenge myself in. Not because I don't care about winning, because actually the only way I score, the only thing I actually care about is my ELO going up. And the only way I can possibly make my ELO go up with effective use of time is by running terrible things like Greyjoys or neutrals, right? So actually what I care about is effective use of my time. And it's more effective for me to use something like Greyjoys or neutrals. And I'm not even going to sit here and lie, that is incredibly self-centered, incredibly, like, don't give a shit about other people. I will run the worst thing I think I can run to beat somebody with because it gives me the most points. And the difference being is that I'm not going to enter an event where it is touted as competitive with the strongest thing in the game. Because the point of the event, there's no point winning. Like, winning a nationals event doesn't hold any relevance to you whatsoever. Like, you coming first in a nationals event in your own opinion, is irrelevant because it doesn't matter. Whereas coming first in a national event for somebody else, that does matter to them. And so I have a thing where, like, for me, LGT, the Invitational, 100%, the Invitational mattered for me this year. I wanted to go along, and I'm not even going to sit here and lie. I've said it before. I want to win the Invitational, right? LGT would have been nice, but I said it before. I think winning 11 games on the bounce is just unrealistic. And then France, I wanted to go and win in France, right? I don't want to win this event. I have no intentions of trying to win this event with the best thing in the world because it doesn't.
See,
the event doesn't. This is the event for you.
What I think, but this is what I think is toxic. This is what I think is a toxic idea and concept.
Yeah,
is that you marry up, I want to win this event with I must play the most powerful thing in the game.
No,
and I think across the entire game, it is a toxic idea.
I think that's just again a massive jump to a conclusion.
It is a jump to a conclusion, but you were basically just saying, I wanted to win this event, therefore I played Mance. It was the Invitational. I wanted to win. I played Mance.
I played the strongest list I thought I could run. Yeah.
I wanted to win. I played Mance. I went to France, even though you'd already won. You'd already fucking set out your goals. Mm-hmm. Suddenly you added a bonus goal. I also want to go and win in France.
Yes.
You'd already won with Mance. Could easily have played something else.
Could easily. But I wanted to go and see if I could replicate it.
I wanted to go and win. Yeah. So therefore I played Mance. Whereas every tournament that I go to, I also want to go and win. I fucking love winning. Love winning every game. I still play things that I know are not the most powerful. Because I want to win, I must play the most meta-defining winning thing in the winningest thing in the game. Mm-hmm. Are two separate requirements.
Okay.
I want to win is enhanced by the fact that I choose not to play the most meta-defining thing in the game.
I mean, I was semi-interested to see how, because this is another thing, you don't give a shit about, but doesn't matter. I was interested to see what the French would do with Mance anyway. And, it would be interesting to see what their versions of the same list would be into a different version of the list. I
was interested to know what the French would do with Mance.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that I need to play Mance.
No, but well, the thing is that if you're testing two builds, how do you know the success of a build or not? The only way is to play them against each other. But it doesn't matter. I'm defending a pointless thing by the sounds of it. But yeah, I go back to my initial statement. The event is competitive. There are players, not just myself. There are other players in the event who, if they were going to enter, they wouldn't be running the best thing because there's no point winning events with the best thing, as we know. If it's just an event that there's no reason to have it. There was a point to winning French nationals because as far as we knew, there's a national spot. There's actually a point. It's got nothing to do with the game. It's got nothing to do with how hard you made it. No one gives a shit if you won with Night's Watch or you won with Free Folk or you won with whatever. No one gives a shit. The only thing that matters. Who?
The entire community gives a shit.
Do they? Why?
Yes.
I don't get why. Yeah, because we know what's going to win. Surely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter. I don't know. I just don't think that's that important because, like you said before, every game is just another game. Every event is just another event. It doesn't really matter what wins an event.
It does.
Why?
What's won all the events recently is Mance Free Folk.
Yes, it happens to be.
That has proved that it is not the player skill that has done it. Yeah. Because many different players, this doesn't say that the players aren't skillful, that the players aren't good, that they aren't playing, high level of Song of Ice and Fire. Yeah. But the single consistent thing across all the events is the list that they play.
Yes.
This tells you that the list that they play is wildly more important than the skill that they have as players.
So you're talking about
nobody should give a shit about who won because it has little value, because many people have been able to do it by fielding exactly the same thing as each other. So what actually won was the list. The thing that was consistent across all of them was the list. It was the commander. It was the things played.
Yes.
That is what won the event,
Yes.
not who won the event.
No, but I didn't. Doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't actually matter. Yeah.
So you're just saying that the community doesn't give a shit what was won with? Yes, they do. They do care.
They care. The thing is, they care about what is winning, right? Mance didn't need to win the LGT or the Invitational for us to know Mance was OP. That's actually the thing I'm trying to make a point of, right? Because if Mance doesn't win we look at the data and we look at the events and we look at it and go say, yeah, but Mance wins a lot. Mance's win rate is very high. He didn't win the event, but that must have been down to individual skill. So this is actually the thing, is if an individual wins away from the strongest thing, we say that individual is good. If something wins that conforms with the information, we say it's the data, it's the thing we expected. Nobody's surprised that Mance won the LGT. I don't think anybody was, right? But my point comes back to, it doesn't matter that Mance won the LGT. What mattered was that Mance had an incredibly high win rate, which, fucking huge win rate is ridiculous. That's a problem. It didn't matter that he won in Poland because, again, from a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of players, had a ridiculous, ridiculous win rate, right? We want to see these things. We expect him to win, and when we see it, we go, yeah, that conforms with what we know. And then when we sit here and go, Luke won in the US, we don't sit here and say, US Starks must be busted or anything like that. No, we say Luke is a good player. For the other events, we say Mance was the best list. For that event, we say Luke is a good player. And that's the way that the community looks at things, or we look at things, certainly, as the community. And that's fine, right? That's absolutely fine that we look at events and say, look, that won. We don't really care that much that won because it conforms with what we know. Or even pushes it further. It makes it even worse than what we know. That's my point. I maybe not caring about what win event is bad language, but like what we care about is stuff that counteracts, counter expectation is what we care about, right? I guess is what I would say.
Yeah.
And the thing is, that wasn't counter expectation, so it didn't matter. It did matter, but it doesn't matter nearly as much as Luke winning US Nationals, which was counter expectation. I don't know. That's the way I view it, and yeah, I don't know. Feels like we were way off topic there as a close down today.
Yeah, I just, I just, and it's not even specific to Mickey, but he is a very, very, he is obviously sat across from me, mm-hmm. And we talk all the time on this show, so it's the only person to have this discussion with,
mm-hmm.
But I as part of my moral code, as it were, moral code that you think that I play this game by.
Mm-hmm. Which you do, I believe.
I think that I fucking hate the people who go over and play the best thing in the game. Like, I think it's toxic as fuck. Like, if we're just sitting here and being honest,
mm-hmm.
So as much as I throw barbs, shall we say, at Mickey in the past for playing Mance and for his wins, right? Like, I've always had enough respect for it because Mickey's always played Free Folk, right? Like, he didn't switch factions to go and play Free Folk. But then what got my fucking tits up was when you suddenly were like, well, I've fucking completed them, so I'll go play something else. Oh, and I don't care about winning, so I'll go play something else, right? Like the action of you playing Mance and Free Folk was inexorably linked to you wanting to win.
Okay.
Which is the thing I fucking hate. Which is all the people who turned up to LGT to play Mance for the first time ever because Mance is the most winning thing.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I think it's toxic as fuck that that 6 of the top 8 were free folk. Right?
Yeah.
So that is what I hate. That is what you were spouting, in my opinion.
Okay.
The idea that you'll play Mance when it matters and you can play whatever the rest of the time.
Well, I'm sorry that
None
is
of
what
it
you read.
fucking matters, guys. It's fucking toy soldiers.
Exactly.
Nobody cares. Yeah?
Exactly.
Nobody gives a flying fuck about you being national champion of it. Yeah?
No.
So.
Well, no, the individual does. That's the thing.
When
Actually, the
you
individual
said
does.
things in the past like, oh, it's not win at all costs when somebody like plays Mance or whatever, it is if they play him only for the reason that they're switching to them now for that.
Okay.
Right? And it does happen in every game, and there is always an amount of it. But I think that the amount that has happened this year is embarrassing. The amount that Mance has won is embarrassing to the game and the community. Guys, there are fucking 50, 70 commander pairings. One of them has won the vast majority of all the biggest tournaments.
I don't think that's embarrassing though. It's not embarrassing. That's
not
just
fucking balance. That is the antithesis of a balanced gameplay. Of a balanced game.
That's true.
That is the antithesis of everybody rushing to be a win at all costs player and having zero faction loyalty.
Fair enough. Cool. Well, there you go. That's this week's episode over. I really hope that Farewell to 2022 goes well.
So do I. I really fucking hope that the balance changes soon.
Yeah, you're in sad mode, ultimate sad mode.
I am. The balance is worse than it's ever been, Mickey.
I know.
It is worse than it's
I'm not
been.
disputing that. I'm not disputing that, am I? I'm just saying you are in ultimate sad mode.
I have a problem with Mance, whereas I don't have a problem with Mance. I have a problem with how much of an outlier he is.
I agree.
He is more dominant than Othel ever was. He's more dominant than Howland ever was. More dominant than Starks ever were.
I mean, all of the events that we've seen are all bigger this year as well, which has an impact. Bigger events will drive the attitude that you hate. Bigger events will actually create that more often. Like the larger an event gets, just like the larger any community gets, the attitude you talk about hating is going to be more prominent. So with larger events, which we've had like 3 of the largest events ever for the game this year, you are going to see that attitude more than you ever saw with Offal, than you ever saw with Starks, because the game was in lockdown and we didn't see events of that size. Right? I think you have to take that into account. I'm not justifying it. Don't take that as a justification. But the only reason you didn't see it with the other things is because those events weren't there. That's my point. We didn't have that.
They had pairings and triples of things that were like so far
pair, right?
back.
Yeah.
No. I mean 3-way triangles of things that were acceptably beating each other. I'm talking about Othel versus Mother of Dragons and Drogo being an actual matchup that can be played, and Mountain that rides
being
Tyrion. Mountain that rides Tyrion, being able to, with the right card draw, still give Howland Rob an actual game. And I just don't think it's the same anymore.
Okay.
To Joey says, didn't basically, doesn't the site enable the community to discover all these things? And basically, isn't the site part of that problem? See, this is one of the reasons why, yes, Chris, it is a little bit out the blue. You know, like I've been feeling these things and felt like this for like more than 6 months. I just didn't want to let all this negativity be the main talking point of every Tourney Ground episode, because it's the only thing that I've thought for the past 6 months.
It's 2023, mate. You can let it all go and sit in 2022, hopefully. Therapy.
So, Joey, the site communicates these things to people, and yes, if what you take from the site is therefore that's the most winningest thing in the game, that is the best chance to win, therefore I will play it, then yes, the site is the problem. It is the problem in the site, in the game. And I actually agree, and I fucking hate that. I hate that the thing that I have created has become the problem. Because the thing is that the entire way that the site is built says you gain nothing for doing it.
Yep.
So don't do it. This is the most winningest thing in the game. So don't use it, because there's nothing to prove or gain from winning with it. Use more difficult things. Mickey talks about, oh, I would like to get my ELO up.
Mm-hmm.
But I hate the idea that, oh, but this is now an important tournament. Therefore, fuck ELO, fuck ranking. I'm just going to go and dominate 7 people in a row with the most winningest thing in the game. Even though I know that the ELO gain from it is non-existent. Because now I don't care about my ELO. I don't care about a ranking system, which helps create balance in the game. I don't care about a ranking system which promotes people for winning hard games and proving themselves as good players. Now I care about that trophy over there, and I want to take that home. That's what matters to me, not proving that I'm a good player by bucking the trend.
Surely, so I will just add it there.
Where I have the big issue, which is there are so few people who either understand the ELO system or actually utilize it in a way that improves the game. The people is pretty much Mikkel. End of list. I mean, it's not entirely true, but you know, like,
say that's just, yeah. I feel like you're underselling the point, which is, or making a mountain out of a hill, in that people can have different goals, right? In that I understand how the ELO system works the best, right? And that I will always try and benefit myself as much as I can using the ELO system from a game that I can play in terms of like gaining rankings, this, that, and the other. But that's independent of winning an event. And when I mean independent of winning an event, that is, if I was playing the game... No.
It all goes in the fucking bin the moment you want to win an event.
Right. This is massively different. Massive difference. Is that can be one thing that you do. You can have secondary things that you want to do. It doesn't, and we're not saying it goes in the bin the moment an event comes around, right? What you're saying is that what is the objective? What is the person's ability here? I would not complain if Chris Eustace turned up to Scotland with Mance and tried to win the event with Mance. Why should I complain? He's doing that because he wants to do that, right? And that is his objective or goal, right? He won't gain from the system. I don't care if he's not gaining from the system, because that isn't his objective that weekend. And it's completely fine to want to win. There's nothing wrong with wanting to win. You don't have to challenge yourself if you don't want to. We can sit here and say that that's a good or bad thing, but if nobody ever did it, then no one would ever play Mance, and Mance wouldn't be a problem ever, which would be a kind of problem, because then the balance would never find out what was a problem, kind of.
No, I mean,
think
like,
you can have just different goals.
For a start, like this idea that okay, we have to be really clear. Mance doesn't have to win tournaments for him to be the number one rated
No,
thing.
he doesn't. He doesn't.
Right? Like this is also the thing that people don't understand,
He
right?
does have to see
If
games,
Mance
right?
is just doing well, if he's coming second, third, and fourth, right, while being played by beginners, that still proves that Mance is wildly powerful. Nobody through a Song of Ice and Fire stats. Let's be very, very clear here. Through a Song of Ice and Fire stats, Mance does not have to win tournaments to prove his power. Now, to a lot of people in the community, he might have to. Yeah, to a lot of people in the community, it's not worth anything unless it's winning events.
Yes.
And I understand that we discuss the fact that, like, hey, has Ulla been tested in a big event yet? You know, his stats say he's super powerful, but he hasn't won anything successful, which is an obvious point. Ulla is absolutely dominant while not having a single big tournament to his name yet. Yeah. Just shows that you don't have to be winning events to be one of the most powerful things in the game.
But you do have to see play. And I'm not suggesting here that...
Yeah. If nobody plays Mance,
exactly.
but like,
yeah,
why
that
would
wouldn't
nobody
happen.
play Mance? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
that doesn't happen. People play stuff.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I just think the problem is that, like... Yeah, I just don't know. I just think that there is... People will play stuff if they think it's strong, and if people's opinion, like if someone wants to go and win an event, if they factually just want to go and win an event, right, then that playing the best thing is their best option to do so. I can't blame someone for making that decision. It's a balance problem. Now, do I think it's good for the game? No. I don't think it's good for the game. I don't think the game is ever good. The balance of the game is not in a good state if that is the way the balance of the game sits, right? But then we're basically saying is nobody should ever pick the strongest thing in the game. And that's fine. If that's the opinion we want to have, that nobody ever picks the strongest thing in the game, that's what we did with Othel. We, not so much we, but people just banned it. People don't ban other stuff, but people are straight up banning Othel to prevent it from happening. I just think that anyway, it doesn't really matter. The game's balance when we consider Mance is a problem.
And Varame.
And Varame, yeah, free folk, right? Just say free folk for short.
No, because that oversells the problem.
Sure.
Because
I think no, because you said it before.
most
Hunters
people don't have a problem with playing against Tormund or Rattleshirt or the Weeper.
But you said it yourself with
People will
right?
complain about Endless Horde in the same way that they complain about Melisandre, that they complain about XYZ, right? But it will not be the same magnitude of problem. They may still have an MPE about it, but that's just something that they have to get over, and the games will not be won on an incredibly consistent basis.
But we said it before. You said it before with Hunters, right? And that Hunters are overtuned, and yet in Free Folk they're not overtuned. Like they're not that good a 5-point option in Free Folk, and yet they obviously are an obscenely good 5-point option compared to everything else. Like, free folk are a problem. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that they're not, and I think it would be lying to people if they were. Free folk are a problem. Mance is the pinnacle of that problem. Varamir is the last base camp before the final climb on the final day of that problem. They're both massive issues. But yeah, I don't know. I just think that free folk are a problem, inverted commas, for the balance. And Hunters, if not, completely prove that. But yeah, just needs to...
It's time for a
what we're
change.
talking about. It is.
It's time for a fucking change.
It is. Who do we want to be? I know what we want to be good, Carlo. 2023, after all of this chat, the last thing we'll say. Which command, if you could pick a commander, and I know you don't actually care.
For commanders, I want 7-point infantry to be viable. Yes. I want 6-point infantry to be good. I want 7 activations to be the new meta.
Yep.
And 10 activations to be just silly traff that just dies every second. Just because it's different than the way the game has been for such a long time.
I'm absolutely happy with that.
I don't even like 7 activations. I've always played high activation play. But I just want it to be different. I want it to be something else. It might be worse. That's why we need an update in 6 months' time.
I want Belwas. Targaryen infantry and Belwas to be good. There you go. Targs need some time in the sun that isn't Drogo. Anyway, 2023.
See what fucking dark thoughts I get left with when I just like sit by myself over Christmas.
This is why, look, it's now 2023, Carlo. Everything from now on is rosy gold, right? You can leave all of that negativity back in 2022. It won't be a problem in 3 months. Let's pretend it's the end of February. It won't be a problem then.
That's a lie.
That is a lie. All right.
So, like, you know, to bring the conversation full circle, tons of what weighs on my mind in negativity is that I don't believe there'll be a patch for, like, I don't believe there'll be a patch this quarter. You know?
Sag.
I don't think too much WoW. Too much WoW is a product of being so fucking unhappy with Song. Like, I don't even want to think about Song anymore. It's so fucking depressing. I don't believe that at Scotland that the balance will have changed.
I also agree. I don't think it will.
I don't believe it will be.
No.
And so, like, and so, what am I playing for? Like, what am I playing for right now? I've played a major event into that balance and did not enjoy it for the reasons discussed, which is I either participate in what I think is the most toxic part of the most possible toxic activity in this game by switching to Mance, or I shrug my shoulders and say, well, 99% I lose then. And I am not embarrassed to admit, or like not saying that wanting to win is acceptable and something that I enjoy and something that I base playing the game around. I do not think that it is toxic to want to win. I think that it's toxic to be willing to do anything to the detriment of everybody else in the community to achieve it. And so I will not get on that bandwagon because I think it's to the detriment of the community. And so I'm left with nothing because now I am now of the opinion, since LGT, Poland, France, that there is no other option. I might think differently if I believed that Martells were going to be out in the UK anytime soon. I might think they at least are a question that's unanswered. And that's what makes me unhappy about it, because there is nothing in my mind to think about and ponder on anymore. There is an answer to everything that you've thought of. There isn't some secret tech. There isn't some crazy combo nobody ever thought of that beat Mance with these 2 simple tricks. No, it doesn't fucking exist. It's got you beat in every phase of the game. So
what you need to do, set your own goals that aren't necessarily about that. Gain ELO as a goal. Win with a commander pairing that you don't think is very good. Win with a unit inclusion that you don't think is very good.
So you know, like, I understand that, like,
badges.
when it comes to a particular event, I can know that I'm super up against it, and then just, you know, like, be happy with how I did. I'm happy. I'm at least content. Should we say the word content? I am completely fucking content with joint 5th, 6th, whatever. Like, the last game isn't played at France with Night Watch. I'm completely happy with that. I didn't break my own code.
No.
So I still played awful, even though I knew it was slightly a bad choice at the time. I still finished the top Night's Watch player, and I beat a Free Folk Mance player who everybody told me was the best player in France. So, there's some check boxes there. Great. I did as well as I could have expected coming 5th. That is literally as well as my wildest dreams were. Like, it wasn't going any further than that.
That's a good thing, right? It's a good event.
0 chance that I beat you in Feast for Crows in the semi-final. 0. There is 0. I don't even give myself 5% chance to win that game.
Okay. But, like, that's a good event, though, still, right? Because you
went... I could have come 3rd or 4th if I'd won the game before.
Yeah.
Which I could have. It went down to, like, a dice roll on the last round. Then, great, I can come 3rd. But I've always, like, for me, you don't win, you don't win.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, and I don't believe that I can win.
Okay.
So, like, I'm content.
Okay.
I'm content with that result. I'm content enough. Less content with top 8 at US Nationals, because that was a winnable game. But you know what? It wasn't top of my priority list at the time. So I'm content with that one too. But, like, I don't want just contentment from another tournament with the same thing. I want to test an idea and see and go into the tournament thinking that I'm playing for the win. To play for the win.
Anyway.
No. Fuck off. I'm not playing.
Not playing Lannisters. Or
I'm
let's not.
I'm not playing Lannisters, and I'm not playing 2 NCUs. 1, because it's dog shit, and 2, because it's not my style.
Yeah.
And I have played 2 NCUs, and it's dog shit. Recently, it's dog shit.
Anyway, thanks a lot for tuning in this week, guys. We've got an event in Russia happening this Thursday, an event happening in Russia on Friday, which is awesome. One in Kazan and one in some other place. An event happening in Abbeville in France, a 38. Maxi Reeves' tournament. It's quite a big event. Might watch that one on Saturday, see how that one pans out. 18 players in Belgium this Saturday as well. That's pretty awesome. Probably see some of the Belgian guys over there, hopefully. Got a small event happening in the Netherlands on Saturday as well. 2-day event happening in, 1-day event happening in Rocket City. Rocket City Tournament 1 for this year. I hope that one goes really well. No doubt Luke and the gang at that one. Dark Wings, Dark Words in Russia again. Russia are pulling out quite a few events this week. Italy in Pescara. Liverpool, the Northwest Civil War Just Play. Sounds the Northwest Civil War doesn't sound like a Song Ice and Fire tournament. Sounds like a the British Civil War, like Roundheads Cavaliers tournament or something. I don't know. Or maybe American Civil War. Or maybe Legion. Maybe they're playing Clone versus Stormtrooper Civil War. Ooh. Anyway. Dragon's Roost event happening on the Sunday as well, finishing on the Monday morning. And that has got us for this week. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 events happening this weekend, which is still positive. People are still playing in events after all that doom and gloom. There's still people playing events and people still love the game. And hey, that's what matters the most, is people still playing and people still enjoying it. And yeah, I really hope those go well. I really hope all the events coming up in the stuff after that come really well. Stephen obviously saying in Brunswick, Ohio, they've got one coming up. I hope that goes really well for yourselves as well. Yeah, cool. Well, thanks a lot for joining us. This is 2023. We've set the tone quite well. Things can only go up from here.
Pray for Carlo. Pray that he's next Monday.
Take it easy.
Ready? Aim!
There's too many.
Anyone see my mammoth?
Stubby!